How are you?
Very well. No, I got around for it.
She's got a kid. Anyway, how are you?
I haven't had here since I was about 18. That first shape I had right around.
Basically, the bottom line is what he's doing a problem, and if it is, that's what you deal with. The problem, not the problem.
Probably create the actual sound on that
When and so the pizza will be a straight file.
Happy birthday, Monique.
I know my right. See this, so I help with my end. Remember, I take care of myself. Remember the being at breakfast.
Say hello to Richard here.
I didn't come
How are you? How's it going? Morning.
Thank you.
Kid party. Richard.
You can hear my voice, raise your hand. Okay, let's, meeting today. I appreciate you all coming out, sharing ideas and getting new ideas. I will call the meeting to order.
Except for the first paragraph.
I'm sorry?
You have to read this one for special meeting.
No, if these people can't read,
It's gotta be back to the record.
I can't, no, I'm just thinking. Okay, 10 minutes. I'll wait. Welcome to the Board of Trustees meeting. We're being filmed. You can start the camera. Members of the audience are invited to address the board on any subject. Tonight's agenda, and that item is being addressed. We help the board conduct. I'm not used to reading it, I'm sorry, I guess I'm gonna have to practice for Dr. Susan. To help the board conduct their meetings efficiently, the board asks if you wish to comment tonight, to the board tonight, you complete the speaker's card and present the board the card to the board clerk. Prior to the item being discussed by the board, wait to be called upon to speak, come to the podium. Okay. And state your name. Individual speakers shall be allowed 3 minutes to address the board for each agenda item, and the board shall limit the time. Public input for each item for 15 minutes. The board's consent doesn't may increase or decrease the time allowed for the public presentation, depending on the topic of and the number of people who wish to be heard. The president may take a poll of the speakers for or against a particular issue and may ask additional persons to speak only if they have something new to add. Speakers are advised that their speeches may be open to civil liability, defamation, etc. If it involves complaints against staff, speakers in this instance are encouraged to speak with the complaint officer and board superintendent about the complaint process.
Did it. Yeah, I just do roll call.
You know, I think I'm in Mrs. Wingo's room,
Yeah.
and she's standing over me.
That's what we don't do. Yeah.
Next item on the agenda is a roll call.
Absolutely, it's roll call.
Mr. Romero, would you?
Robert Bernaschi. Present. Peter Hernandez. Present. Elizabeth Martinez. Patricia Moore.
Yes, sir.
Jose Rodriguez. One absent.
Okay, now, we're in, if you would. Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, and now we have, I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So. Second.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Now, we'll begin our discussion on data that we have accumulated regarding functioning and our kids. That's what we're here for.
Lucius, if I could ask you to check in with the that's great.
Well, welcome to everyone. I think this has been a long time coming, having a chance to sit down and do a study session on our data and understand where we are and the variety of indicators that we're being held accountable to. I can just have you refer to the agenda. First, I thought we'd go around and do introductions, because some of you may know the principals and some of you may not, because we're here today with the entire administrative family. So we'll start here with our birthday girl, Monique Ruiz, principal at HGLA.
Jason Miller, principal at Francis.
Kim Ward, who's a little bad name.
Call over Principal Kelly Wilson.
Pam Little, principal of Sierra Vista.
Diana Hurst, principal of the academy. Christine White, the principal of Cavalier School.
Joe Regas, principal of Sunny Slope School.
Bill Saka, principal of Margaret Hayes Middle School.
And then actually principal Arlene. Right, and then just for, since we have this wonderful person sitting here in the audience,
Hi, Rosa Maria Duarte, assistant principal, HDLA.
thank you. So, I just want to thank all the principals for giving their time today. I know this is, some of you had things planned, so do you have things planned, some people were born on this day. And just that you are showing your dedication, passion, and focus to this issue by making sure that you were here today. And you all look great. So glad to see everyone here. I just wanted to start by reviewing some norms. The board has set norms when it comes together to do study sessions and retreats. And so if you look at in your binder or in your packet, turning to the first page after the agenda, and I just kind of highlighted a couple of things that I think are going to be of particular interest today as we work through data. Data can be bring out a lot of emotion, and it can bring out a lot of really great problem solving and conversation as well. That's what I'm hoping to direct us toward. And so one of the things that I'm looking forward to today of the norms that I'm holding are working toward the future and learning from the past. And we're going to pull the curtain back today for our board and show them how we the tacticians are learning from the future and learning from the past and moving to the future. Keep our focus on professionalism and focusing on the process. We have learned that the issues that we have here are systemic. It's not about a person. And so you'll see how we've been evaluating our processes and strategies and looking toward the future. We're going to discuss some complex issues in a thoughtful and respectful manner. It's going to take all of us putting our brains together to really help us have those breakthrough results that we all want for students. And then develop a foundation of respect between and among members. Today, as I said, we have our administrative family with us, which is all the site leaders, who it's their charge every day to make sure that awesome things happen for staff and awesome things happen for kids. So this is why we're sitting at a round table. We are here together. This is the team today. This is the team in the future that's going to move this district forward. And then if you just take a moment to read it under the develop a foundation of respect between and among members, you just read those other bullets there to yourself. There she is. And then the next page, and again, this is right out of our board's governance handbook. This is what they work on once a year. This is how they've chosen to govern. We revise it yearly. And then just honest and open communication among team members. This is the place to have this. And I know, I have the benefit of knowing each and every one of you, and I know I can count on honest communication. So in setting the purpose of our day, when the board did its self-evaluation in September, the decision was made to become a high-functioning school board. We had the CSBA leader here helping us through that. Board members decided to become a high-functioning school board, spending at least 65% of their time focused on student achievement, policy, and strategy. And that was something that they really wanted to make sure that they did moving forward, and this is a major step in that effort. And as you continue looking how that then became reflected after the norms, the next page is also page 5 out of the governance handbook. And it sets that the school district governance and the role of this board and what the role of this board will be. And it says when governing effectively, which is what the board wants to do, that is their desire, by focusing that 65% of the time. Since the school district governance, the role of the board, when governing effectively, the board is the strategic visionary leadership. And in a moment, we're going to talk about the different roles that we have.
The board is strategic. This team around the table is tactical. Our teachers are operational. Today, we're going to be pulling back the curtain a bit on our tactical plan and our tactical role and letting the board peer into that, but realizing that the board's role is to stay at that strategic level. And then making decisions that support the accomplishments of the district vision, mission, goals, align district systems and resources, ensure the long-term fiscal stability of the district, and fulfill legal requirements. And we've been talking as a team about moving forward that reallocation of resources. What are we currently doing? What do we need to do? And how do we reallocate our resources in order to fulfill that? And so you're going to see how we brought that together. And then in order to govern responsibly, this handbook, they've decided that they'll be guided by community interests and informed by recommendations of the superintendent and then around this table with professional staff. So grounding us in our ways of governing and what we've agreed to and the norms that we've agreed to for the day. So in taking that a step further, the next page, we can look to some of the experts on how a field book from how school boards can effectively focus on student achievement is Mark Van Clay and Mary Salvadell. And I took from their book what the school board's strategic role, administrator tactical role, and the staff's operational role. Because while we had those words in our governance handbooks, this gives us kind of the specific actions we should be doing. And again, just as our board has agreed to in their governance handbook, you see that they're the visionary change agent, and they have a positive stance towards change. And I will tell you, in working with this board since I arrived, and then with Rob's, once he's gotten onto the board, it has remained, they really are looking to the future, and they know there needs to be a change. And they are visioning that change, and they are supportive of that change. And then again, ensures the resources. The board doesn't make the change happen. Okay, that's our role as administrators and the teacher's role as operationalists. But they expect it to happen. And they don't manage the tactics that will bring about that change. That's our role. And then we have to help the teachers make that happen. But they're going to hold that strategic vision of this is the future and this is where we're going. So how the board should be using data, which is what this session is about. They need to be examining the successes or failures towards strategic goals. And that's why we're here. But we also need to show them, hey, and pull back the curtain, as I said, and show them our administrative tactical role of how are we using data to inform our plans moving forward. It's not about trust. It's not that they don't trust us to do the right thing. They just want to see what's going on. And how can we support what's going on? And how do we know that we've learned and that we're going to move forward? So any questions about the purpose of the day, the frame of the day, or anything around that from the board?
Would there be any objections? We only have one visitor, and she is assistant principal at HCLA. She's more comfortable joining at the table.
I have no problem with that.
Can we do that for you?
Come on, that Rosemary. Thank you. Absolutely. Okay.
I personally like the way it's laid out, the strategic, the technical, and the operational.
Yeah. So it kind of gives some texture
In our sphere of influence.
Absolutely. And what we're counting on you for. What you can count on us for and what we're counting on you for. So let's look how at the agenda, and then we'll go ahead and dive in. So first, what are we being held accountable to by the state and federal government? Okay, we're going to talk about that. And then we're going to look at how the district is currently doing in English language arts. You have seen this data as the schools have individually presented, but we've just put it all on one page, easy to read. And then what are we currently doing that could be the cause of these results? And then what are we learning from these results to plan to the future? We're going to do that for English language arts. Then we're going to do it for English language development. And then we're going to turn the page. We're going to take a break. And then we're going to look at math. And then culture and climate. And then talk about what the next steps are. Is there anything more that you need as a board? And what can we count on you in terms of support? And that should be the day. We're not going to stay and dissect school by school, because truly what we've discovered as we've done our analysis is this is a systems-wide, there's system-wide reasons why we have our current results, and we know that we must have a system-wide response to our results. So that's kind of how we have the day flowing. Any questions about the agenda? Let's talk about how the binder is organized. The binder is organized into 3 sections. The red section 1 is all of the student achievement data. The blue section 2 is the culture and climate data. And the yellow section 3 is the appendices. This is where you will find information about the research or other reference documents. We've tried to distill and make them as easy to read as possible, table format, bullet format. But if there's anything that you would like to go more deeply with, then just let us know. So let's start actually looking in section 3 behind the state accountability tab. So what are we being held accountable to? What is the state holding us accountable to that then makes the formula for what the feds will hold us accountable to? And if the principals want to go to the very back, and it's the state performance indicators is what we're going to be looking at. It's right before all the research. So the state performance indicators that we're being held accountable to are suspension rates, English learner proficiency, English language arts, math, and in the future, chronic absenteeism. Those are the state indicators. Okay, so there's formulas that go with all of those. So you turn the page. We also are going to be held accountable to the local performance indicators. These are not going to be measured in the same way in every district, which kind of makes you wonder, apples and oranges. These, the only one we're going to look at today is school climate, local school climate survey. Now, when you look at these states, let's go back to the state indicators. A district will be considered to go back, remember those program improvement days? When you had to have technical assistance, and you had to have all of this. The district or a school site would be considered to be in program improvement, in assistance or intervention, if they miss one student subgroup, like Latino, EL, socioeconomically disadvantaged, special ed, if they miss one subgroup in 2 or more of those indicators. One subgroup in 2 or more of those indicators. Okay? So the stakes are very, very high. What does it mean to be an assistance? What does it mean to be an intervention? That's all still being determined. These are the indicators that we're being held accountable to. Any questions about the indicators? Pretty straightforward, huh?
Can you give us an example of one subgroup?
When we look at the first ELA data, I'll show you that. Sound good?
Okay.
Yeah, that's an example.
I didn't hear his question.
Can you give us an example of what it would mean a subgroup and missing it?
Oh, yeah.
So the next page after the state and local indicators, you've seen these colors, these pieces of pie. You've seen these colors when the sites have presented their data. We need to be in the green or blue. The green or blue means that we are meeting the expectation. Everything yellow means we're almost there. But green or blue means we're meeting the expectation. And then if you look at the next page, we're not going to spend any time on this. But this is what the state is calling a dashboard. And this, Peter, do you see going down the blue, all the blue categories going down the left-hand side? Where it says all students, American, Indian, Asian. Okay. For Hollister, we're going to have Latino and white. We'll have socio-disadvantaged, students with disability, English learners. So there's about 5 or 6 of those subgroups that we will have, because there's a significant number of them. So it would mean one of those subgroups missing the mark in English language arts, one of those subgroups also missing the mark in math. So that's 2 indicators, 2 priority areas are missing it in English language learner development. Okay. The stakes are very high. And then they'll give us, this is called a dashboard, and every district will have one. And then you see on top those indicators that I just talked about. There's chronic absenteeism, suspension rate, EL assessment, math assessment. So it's missing the subgroups at the side of those indicators. So every year we'll get a dashboard like this. Lana, did I get that right? Okay, good.
And I'm going to be getting further training on this dashboard Monday morning.
Monday morning, yes.
So we say that they're succeed or fail because of their subgroup?
Why the state does that is because so that you don't have white students scoring 100% and Latino students scoring 50%. Therefore, your average is 75% and you look fine. Because they don't want one group pulling up another group. It's like all your groups should be achieving. Okay. All right. So now let's go back to section 1, and now we're going to answer the question. Let's see how I'm doing. 9:20. All right, I'm only like 6 minutes behind. Just gonna click it below. So where is the district currently in regard to state and local indicators in English language arts? So go behind section 1, the ELA tab. ELA is in English language arts. And for those in the audience, it's the table that looks like that. You guys got it. Great. So here are, here's a table showing our achievement in English language arts. And I'm going to let Lana explain how the table is set up and what this is coming from.
So as Dr. Andrews said, this is all data that you have seen in the presentations that the principals have been giving during your regular board meetings. But we thought it would be helpful to see it all in one place on a table. And what we've done here is do our best to apply those same colors that you saw on the dashboard to what we see as our data so that we can start getting used to looking at it with these colors and see where the trends may be. One thing that we need to remember about the CASP data, or the Smarter Balance Assessment data, is it is very different than in the days when we had the CST, whereby you could drill down student by student and see where the weaknesses were. This is not like that. And those of you that were on the board in September and heard my CASP presentation we talked a little bit about that. The way the scores are reported to us now are just in these numbers. And the full intention is to look at your program. Parent score reports, those of you that have received them, know that you do not get any more information on your student than a 4-digit number that represents a scale score that tells you relatively, you can look at the bands and see where your student falls. Have they met or exceeded? Are they nearly met? Or standard not met? And that's all the information that you get. So the purpose now, when we look at these, and the colors will help us to determine where do we see trends. So if we're looking at English language arts, I see, of course, we know AAA, our AAA scores have been good. We can see that by seeing blue right away at the top. I see a lot of yellow when I look at the page in full. Yellow means we're almost there. We're nearly met. Okay, so that's encouraging to me to look and see that there's a lot of yellow. And I see one particular category where I see a lot of red. So that tells me that we need to look at our students with disabilities, which are students that have special needs and have special education needs and resources. We need to focus some more attention there in the area of English language arts as a subgroup. So Peter, this is where we're seeing one group of students as a whole. We need to look at that program. We need to look how we're serving those students and how we're giving them access to the content to do a better job with this assessment. So that's how it works when you're looking at this. If you look at the next page, you will see the table that I used to apply the colors. And the way the table works is you look down the left and you say, the first year of our past test results, we were here. And then you look across the top and you see how much did you change, positively or negatively, in the second year, and you apply the color band. Okay? So that's where the colors came from. Now, we have received no instruction necessarily with these charts. They seem pretty self-evident. But sometimes the way we're hearing it, within a month, we should be receiving this data from the state applied to our data. So we will get an official set of results. But we wanted to start looking at it that way, start getting a sense of where we may lie programmatically, systematically. So we decided to go with the colors and see how it looks overall.
So the subgroups, as I was saying before, that we're going to be held accountable to, if you look across the top, are white student subgroup, Latino student subgroup, English learners, students with disabilities, and economically disadvantaged. Those are our statistically significant subgroup as a district. For example, at Calaveras, you have the school, before I go there, you have the schools. We included Hollister Prep. We included the whole county. And then the last row is California. So you have a row of Hollister Prep, row of the county, row of California. Noting that Hollister Prep, only their 3rd and 4th graders took the test last year because that's all they had. This year they'll have 5th graders taking it as well. So if let's look at Calaveras and you go to white and it says NA, they do not have enough white students to make a statistically significant subgroup. So that is why it says NA. Just like if you go to HDLA, the row that says HDLA, and you go all the way over to students with disabilities, in spring of 2015, they did not have a statistically significant subgroup. But spring of 2016, they did.
So is that special or?
Students with disabilities is anyone with an IEP. Okay, that's speech, that's a resource, students in the special day class. Okay. So that's, and Lana is, I just want to reiterate what she said. This is a summative test of our program. And we cannot compare 3rd graders this year to 4th graders next year.
in the same, we can't do a cohort because that's not how the test is designed. So we have, this test is meant to be viewed from this very high level. Yeah.
Lisa, why can't you though? I mean, those kids that were in 3rd grade, then were in, 4th grade, right, presumably?
Yeah.
So maybe you're not supposed to, but why isn't that a valid indicator, even though it's not concrete? I mean,
Because the bar moves, because the way, the formula of what they determine to be met or exceeds changes from 3rd to 4th grade. So you're not, it's not psychometrically, mathematically, it's not giving you that kind of information. And the state did that on purpose, because the state wants you to stay up here with program. And that's why then sometimes when we implement something, when we say, well, those kids are right in the bubble of being met, let's just put them into something, an intervention to get them over the hurdle. Sometimes that worked and sometimes it didn't. That's because that number that we were using was not really telling us what we thought it was telling us. So then it begs the question, Rob, well, if it doesn't tell us that, what will? So what assessments then will tell us so that we can do a cohort analysis? And the state has given us those. They've given us practice tests. They've given us interim assessments. They've given us other tools to use so that we can march students along, but it's not this one. Okay. And that's Joe and Lisa and I just spent 2 days at an institute, a testing institute, finding out about that.
Lisa, may I add, because if you look on the CDE-CASP website, they have a new tab up there that says change over time. And if you click on that, it shows you they were 3rd graders last year and they're 4th graders this year. And I think the difference is we used to look at cohorts by student, by class. This is the big, right? Did, in general, in district-wide, with 3rd graders, how did they look in 4th grade? Did we prepare them well enough in 3rd grade to access the level that they would need?
Access the level, right.
So you can look at it. So yes, you look at that tab and you go, well, it's right here. It says 3rd grade, then it says 4th grade. But it's just that we that were so used to the old way have to rethink how that it's programmed. You're going to look at it as a big group, not how did Lisa do last year and then how did Lisa do this year.
Because I have to do markedly better to hit meet the next year. If I got a 2560 skill score in 3rd grade and I met
that
2560 skill score in 4th grade, I don't meet. So it's about preparing them to then stand on their knowledge to go higher in the next year.
Well, I understand, and please forgive me for taking time away, but I understand that we want to look at programs, which I buy into that wholeheartedly. But if I always relate this to the parents sitting in their home over there at Sunny Slope or at the next homes, whatever. So at least for my family, what we were worried about with our 3 children was, were they learning what they needed to in 3rd grade to progress on to 4th grade? Ultimately, the goal was, for us, we wanted to make sure that they were taking calculus by the time they were, I'm afraid to say, was it sophomore or junior in high school. And so that's what I'm going for here is, if I'm measuring 3rd grade, yep, X% did, but then that same cohort in the 4th grade did really poorly, that would say we have a problem with our 4th grade program.
Yes, that's exactly what we're saying.
Okay.
That's exactly what we're saying.
That sounds very complicated.
Okay, so let's look at the next set of data so now we need to know how are we progressing so that bring it down from the big picture data down to the next level. And so if you go to the next set of data after the color code table, so now we have things called benchmarks in every grade to tell us how we are marching toward that score on the state test.
And so if you look at the next one, kindergarten fall 2016, next one. There you go. So what do we have in place to assess how our kindergartners are marching along toward being prepared for first, to be prepared for second, to be prepared for third? And Monica, can you walk us through this?
Yes, and these are not the only assessments, of course, that the kindergarten teachers give, but these are the ones that they do in such a way that we can record them in the system and create a report. So teachers every day are doing, informal assessments or other types of assessments, but these are the ones that we could print out a report and stick in our binder. So this test is called Easy CBM, and it tests foundational skills. And this is one that this is a nationally normed test, so that we know how our students are doing, not only with the teaching that we're giving them, but how are they being measured across students across the United States. Are we meeting the same level of expectation as the norms on the test? So you can see here, basically what you're looking at is white is good. The white section means that your students have met, for that time, the time of year that the test was given, have met the number of letter names, letter sounds, and segmenting skills that they should at that time of year. If you look at Calaveras, 77%, sorry, Christine, you're always first because I go first alphabetically. 77% of the students on the fall test, which was given in October, were considered to be low risk, so they're getting it. And then we have a small band that has some risk and a very small band that were high risk. And when you look at this report online, you can click on the bands and see who those students are so that you can provide some kind of an intervention. So this is kindergarten, and then on the back side you'll see
Flip it over and you'll see first grade. Remember, they don't take the state test.
So this was first grade fall of this year. And at this particular time of the year on this test, now letter names is gone because by the end of kindergarten you should know those. So now it's letter sounds, the segmenting again, and word reading fluency. So in first grade we start with can we read those high frequency words, and it's timed. So can they do it within a certain amount of time? So it's really testing fluency with these skills. So again, white is good. Yellow, you've got a little bit to worry about, and the reddish orange color is, we better hone in on those students.
And so that's the kinder first. And then the next one is a report on second grade, third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, sixth grade, seventh grade, and eighth grade. And these are our district benchmarks for those grade levels. Different kind of report, and Mona will walk you through how to read it.
This is our EDIMS system that we utilize to test the students online. Of course, the other piece of that is trying to prepare them to take the online test. So even in second grade now, we're getting an online reading test. The way you can read this is that if you look across the blue band at the top, you'll see what grade you're talking about. Grade starts with grade 2, benchmark 1. And you'll notice there that it's what we call blueberry pie. Okay? Everything is blue and green in second grade. And what we have come to realize, and what the teachers have brought to us, is a request to make this test more rigorous. Because they know very well, after giving it for a couple of years, that it's not feeding into the rigor of what they need for third grade. And what we had done there was, because there is no third grade, the CASP starts in third grade, so there wasn't anything for second, so we were using the item bank that had come with the EDIM system, which is probably more based on the old CST type questions. So teachers and Kim Garcia in my department are working on making this benchmark utilize language that is going to be needed in the third grade and make it more rigorous. So this was the first test, and it is in development right now to make a more rigorous test. So second benchmark, we'll see how that goes. Then you can see across that we have, again, yellow, a lot of yellow across. One little band of red here that we need to pay attention to. And you can see that The thing about the benchmarks is this really cannot be compared to the CAS. Because this is the litmus test. This is, okay, we've taught some standards. We're going to dip the dipstick in and pull it out and see where we are. Too much acid, too much alkaline, where do we need to adjust our instruction? So, and this is 2 or 3 questions or problems on each standard. Whereas, you know, the CASP test is long and
So can I ask a question? So let's just go, I guess, all the way over to the right. And I'm colorblind, so I can't tell you the colors. But so what I'm focused on is last column over, bottom 2 rows. And we're looking at 51.22% and 28.05%. So if I'm reading this correctly, on these benchmarks, 79% of the kids have, according to this benchmark, either met or exceeded standard.
in grade 8, yes.
In grade
And
8.
let's just back that up with Mays and Rancho are on this report.
Yeah, the next page
It's Mays and Rancho,
is
okay,
all middle schools.
right.
So the page that you're looking at right now, that is 8th grade at HDLA, Calaveras.
K-8s.
Yes, it's the K-8s. The second page are all middle schools.
Oh, okay.
So we have what are considered our elementary schools that have 8th grade, and then we have our middle schools.
Okay.
So,
So now I have 37%, so 54%
Of our 8th graders.
of all of your 8th graders,
Correct.
including AAA and HDLA, which
Yep.
I would argue we need to take out of this, but we'll get there. So, but how does that, it actually would be a lot lower, how does that compare to the CASP, or is it the CASP, these results here?
So so with this 37 and 17 is 54. And we don't have a cumulative 8th grade, because this is by school, not by grade level. So the table we gave you is not by grade level, it's by school.
and it's really hard to compare because the way the CASP is scored too is not just a straight percentage correct, but our benchmark is. We don't have a way to score it any differently than just, did you get it right or did you get it wrong? And we don't have nearly as many, what they call constructive response items in our benchmark as they do on the CASP, which are writing that has to be hand scored by someone. So this, like I said, is just a way for us to, and the standards now, the Common Core standards are basically kind of the same standards, same anchor standards go all the way through the grades, and you're just seeing if the students are being able to do it at a more rigorous level. So what we're doing here is just saying, okay, so now it's 8th grade, and we've taught these standards, which are, pretty much the same, reading for literature, reading, informational text, and a lot of it is if you read and then you answer a question, then can you cite your evidence? It's much more complicated. And this is just, we've taught a level of these standards, and now we're going to stop and just take a little test of how we're doing with those. And like I said, it's only a few problems of each of the standards, and it's not all of the standards. This is how many standards we've taught to this point in the year, and how did we do with them. And then we need to go back and say, oh, 54%, we need more than that. So now we look back at those standards, how are we going to reteach them, how are we going to strengthen those, but we're also moving on with more standards.
Okay, so I'm going to rely on Dr. Andrews to tell me, Rob, shut up until we get to this point that asks the question. I mean that seriously.
Well, I think that what is most important right now is understanding what this tells us and what it doesn't. Because then, well, what are we going to do to get the information that we need in the future to move forward? So what this tells us right now is on a very narrow select pieces of standard that are not even the way we're testing is not even mirroring the way that the kids are going to be testing. And we still only have half of our kids that are mastering.
To me, that's what this says.
Okay, that I understand, but
Right.
what I want to get to is, and again, you can say Rob later, or.
Or Rob,
I mean that seriously.
Or Rob, not your role.
But, so getting back to math, just by way of example, I know that from a parent point of view, I think it's the 7th grade test that, or no, maybe it's the 8th grade, I forget what month you take it, that determines what math you're going to sign up for the high school. High school says, if you did this, then we're going to put you in that. And somebody, can you refresh my memory what that is?
7th grade.
And what's the test they take?
And so it's a whole, this is not the test.
Change over the years, it used to be.
But whatever it is, I mean, no, one of the principles, you gotta know, what is it?
You mean to go to geometry? To geometry and tech? in the
What is
ninth
the
grade?
test that they take that the high school says, based on this test result, we're gonna put you in this class?
Yeah.
Okay,
Oh, or the FDTP, now they also, that's for class specific.
Lisa, what was that? Which stands, or,
So.
but anyway, but that's the benchmark I think we need to measure ourselves against, because our goal is to deliver into the high school kids that are high school ready. And so they're setting the requirements. And that's where
The
I'm.
high school is now actually also looking at the CASP scores.
Okay, so we need to stop using the word CASP and we need to say
Smart
state
balance.
assessment, smart balance
Say
or
what?
state
Oh,
assessment. Because
smarter.
they're gonna get lost in, with the data that we have here, the first table that we showed you, where it's the met or exceeded standards on the smarter balanced assessment,
Yep.
that's what the high school is also looking at. But Rob, you're making the point where we're gonna get to a strategy, and why Joe and Lisa and I went to the State Testing Institute these last few days, is because we don't have a comprehensive, informative assessment system here.
Okay,
So that has to be built. And part of it is realizing, what do we have and what is it telling us? And what don't we have that we still need to find information about? And I think that's part of why this is a study session, is we're showing you what we currently have and then where we need to go in the future. Because we agree, everything that you're saying, we agree. We do not have predictive assessments in place. And so we need to get predictive assessments in place, and we need our teachers understanding what these assessments tell them and how to use them. And so why are we currently where we are? Because we've been using this kind of data to make decisions.
okay,
Got it?
okay. Well, again, what I want to pretend is that we all have 8th graders and we're sending them up to the high school.
Exactly.
And the high school says, because again, I'm familiar with the complaint phone calls. I wanted my child in algebra and they're going into general math or
Right.
whatever.
Right.
How did you choose that?
Right.
Well, based on this test score, influenced by the grades that they got, this is where we put them. That's what the goal is. So I'm sort of getting confused between all the other elements and.
Well, and so are we. I think that's the point. And I think that's the point. Okay, so this is what we're using, and this is what we have been using to make decisions. And so how good is this data? How good has this data been in predicting, and how good has this data been in helping us make decisions? And I think you're arriving to a point that we've arrived to as well.
The other thing is, Rob, too, the whole math thing is much more complicated because it's where you start to advance students in math, take advanced math classes, and that's changed now that Common Core has come in. So that's a whole other discussion that we might want to have even at a board meeting or something where we talk about that.
We need to talk about our math pathway specifically.
Yeah, it's just.
Well, I
that's-
know, but English is almost the same thing. Math is a little
Right.
bit.
But you
more
have these
structured,
options
but-
for advanced math, even starting now in 6th grade. So then you have to give other tests to make sure that you're getting the students that qualify for the advanced, because basically the idea now is the Common Core math is so much more difficult and rigorous that not as many students are going to be ready to go to the advanced path.
Well, that gets back to the programs though. That's why I love talking at the program level to say, because Common Core is well understood now. And I realize that, it's been horrible rollout nationwide. It's been for a whole, became way too political and all this other stuff. But we know from a program starting in kindergarten where they need to be, by, we'll call it first month freshman in high school. So that's what I would, again, I'm not an educator, but I am a parent, and I can identify with that really well. So that's the terms, the only terms that this group will be able to talk to me. Especially if you start using abbreviations, so.
We're trying hard not to.
Yeah.
All right. So now you come to the next page that you'll see says district-wide strategy organizer English language arts, because you have perfect timing in arriving at how predictive is this, why is it working, why is it not working, so I can add this up, no you can't, so what is this telling you? So what we've done is we've looked at the strategies that have been implemented. So what can we learn from those strategies so that we can make decisions for the future? So we're going to spend a little bit of time, because there's an organizer like this for the other sections, so we're going to spend a little bit of time digging into this one to explain to you how it's set up. Now, we're dipping the board right now down into the tactical role. So while you're in the strategic role, this is where we administrators live in the tactical role. So no, we're dipping you down into here, okay? And because we figure we want to pull the curtain back, this is how we're analyzing program, district-wide program. This is a living, dynamic document. It changes after we get better and better information, because we say, wow, Rob, this isn't telling us something. We need to go get more information. So how is this set up? Under the strategy is what are the strategies the district has employed over the last few years to raise student achievement in English language arts. This is the strategy. So they've put the strategy in of professional learning communities. They put the strategy in of having computer programs. They put the strategy in of doing ability grouping with instructional assistants, okay? What is that second category that says Hattie, rank, and effect? Believe it or not, there's a researcher who did what's called a meta-analysis. What's a meta-analysis? He takes the 10, the 20, the 500, the 5,000 research pieces, and he brings them all together and does a meta-analysis. From that meta-analysis, he says, this is how effective that strategy is. So he looked at 287 researchers across the world, worldwide, on professional learning communities. Brought those all together, did a meta-analysis, and said, when you implement this correctly, it ranks number 3 in effectiveness for changing student achievement. And he ranked them from 1 to 138. So then he puts it on a scale of, is it very high effect size, high, medium high? It puts it on a range. So district selected a very high strategy for raising student achievement. The other thing he does is he said, but in order for it to be this high, it must be done this way. And that's what's written in that box. So let's look at professional learning community, and then it says Hattie, rank, and effect. Hattie says it's the 3rd most effective in raising student achievement. It's very high effect. But this is how it needs to be implemented. Teachers must use data. Well, now we just went through some data. How good was that data? Right? How good was that data? And they have to have evidence-based models. What is that? When you put a group of teachers together, they only bring their best knowledge. They need models of excellence to compare their teaching to.
Not just, let's get together, because the highest level in that group, if it's a mediocre teacher, is gonna be a mediocre result. So they must use data that's meaningful. They must have models of excellence. They must focus on innovation, which means we don't do it as we did it yesterday or 10 years ago. We're always looking how to make this better. And we're always asking, why are students not doing well with the teaching strategies? The student's not doing well because they didn't have breakfast this morning, or the student's not doing well because their parents weren't home last night. What was my adult practice, my teaching, that is having a positive or negative effect on the student's learning? Okay. When you implement a PLC like that, with that in mind, you're going to get this very high effect on student achievement. But I said, let me look at one other. Let's also look at Fullen, and then you see Fullen driver. The state of California, in building its accountability system that I shared with you at the beginning, is developing their whole state accountability system on Fullen's drivers. He's also a worldwide researcher. He looks at other countries and how they implement and how they experience success. And he says, so now you know what to implement, which would be PLCs. You know that from Patty. But Fullen tells you how to implement it. He has wrong drivers and he has right drivers. Drivers meaning the how you drive the strategy. And when we look at PLC, for example, the way we have implemented the PLCs is very fragmented, and it's versus being systemic and integrated. How do we know that? Because if you look in the last column, we've made notes about how we've implemented it. So everyone has differing ideas about the purpose of the PLC and the definition of quality implementation. What kind of data to use, how to use the data. We're not planning field trips. We're not talking about, okay, you be the one that runs off page 39. We have not rolled it out in a systemic, integrated way. We've done a lot of training. People have sat in training sessions. And right now our principals are receiving virtual coaching on this from the experts of PLCs, the national experts on PLCs. But we've implemented it in a fragmented way. Okay. This is the kind of analysis that we're doing with each strategy that the district has implemented over the last few years. Why are we getting the results we're getting? What have we focused on? What's the effect size? How did we implement it? And what does that tell us about whether it should be abandoned or continued? So any questions about, we're not going to dive deep into this. This is our planning document. This is our tactical planning document of how we're analyzing the strategies that we've been doing.
So is it measurable from a data point of view? I mean, you know, the data question I had is it district-led or is it just wild, wild west? The teachers are just doing it on their own. And is there any data that comes from it? I don't mean the number of hours. I mean, when we got our individual school reports, everybody said, oh, we're doing X hours or X minutes of PLC, and we're going to do more. But is there any data is it district-led? Can you answer that question?
I think this is where I'm going to let the principals share with you how the implementation of PLCs has happened at their site.
Absolutely. I can tell you to answer your question, I feel a part of it, and this isn't any disrespect to anybody, I feel like could be Wild Wild West, if I'm reading that reference correctly in terms of is everybody kind of on their own in terms of what they're doing, is there complete alignment? I don't know for sure. I'm gonna say yes because I've only talked to a couple principals about what they do. And because I have met with them and talked with them in terms of their strategies. I can tell you for Sunny Slope, what I'm working on directly is ensuring that my teachers are now meeting during those times and that I get finished products from them. So to answer your question about the data, is there data that's coming from there? The beginning of the year started off rough at Sunny Slope in terms of the teachers were meeting, but in full disclosure, I don't believe they knew fully what it is that they were doing. So I have had to take that lead, whether it's been staff meetings or individually meeting with them and laying out my expectations of what it is that I wanted to see. They began turning in those products to me. CFA, common formative assessments, that they were implementing grade level wise, specifically geared towards A standard, and then giving me the results of what it was, and then determining their response to intervention groups, which is also a designated time we have where they take that data, divide the students up into groups, high, medium, low, high, with whatever the data came back as, and then work with teachers during a designated time during the day. They've been getting better as the year is going on. They're still not great, but they are improving as the year has been going on. So,
if I were to walk around,
Wait, I don't want to get right into what Sunny Slope's doing, and I don't, and their specific strategy. I want us to stay on implementing the strategy of professional learning teams. So Joe has said at his site, he felt it was a little bit about like the Wild Wild West. He's had to bring them together on expectation. He's had to make sure that there's a work product.
I just want to know, is this at the grade level, each grade level we were talking about?
yes.
Other opinions? Yeah, Pam?
I'll share. We have been working on PLCs for several years, as we all have, of course. And that we do have pockets of greatness at our school where the teachers have really come together and are very passionate about using the data. And others not so much. And I think that's probably true at most schools because of turnover, and mainly because of turnover. We've got one grade level that's got everybody is new to that grade level within the last year or two. So they're working it out, learning standards. So there's a lot of that type of thing going on. We've got other grade levels that have been together for several years, and they're really getting expert at looking at the data, creating, as Joe had said, creating their intervention groups during RTI based on that data. And we're seeing some real progress in those teams. My time has been spent more, since I've been back, on one or two teams in particular, where I see they need more staff development on that because some of them have not had it. So that's where we're seeing our future going. Definitely with PLCs, we see the value in them, and we just need the teachers to be taught how to do them effectively.
I think we've learned from what has happened in the past, and now we're working with Janelle Keating. So she's teaching us and she's coaching us so that we can.
With who? Or with what?
Solution training, Janelle Keating. We have that we're doing, and we're implementing those strategies now because we have learned.
So if you continue on to using that as an example, so you'll see this document has a current. So we've looked at the current strategies driving English language arts achievement, and we're doing the analysis. And then if you go to the next where it says planned, now what we've done is like, okay, we've done the analysis of the current, where is it, what have we learned, and what do we need to do moving forward? And personally, I'm only interested in the top 20. So and the principals know, they're gonna come to me with, hey, I want to spend money on this, and I'm gonna say, top 20 is where we're at. There are a couple of structures that we will maintain and watch until teachers' capacity is built. So, for example, we know
that instructional coaching is where it's at. If you turn to the next page after plans, I want you to look at this diagram. So it's the last thing in the ELA tab, but it applies to everything. When we look at our current practice, we've done a lot of training about theory and discussion. And when we do that theory and discussion, that row, 10% improvement in knowledge, 5% improvement in skill. Look at the use in the classroom, 0. I'm only interested in doing things that are the top 20 and that we're gonna see a change in the classroom. And that is every filter we're gonna put every action through. The good news is we know what to do. It's clear we know what to do. The hard news is we have to do it. And that's shifting mindset and shifting practice. So if I know coaching in the classroom, Professor Posey doesn't get coached over coffee at Mars Hill. He gets coached while he's batting. I get coached while someone's watching me. I have people that come and watch the board meeting. Not on tape, but watch the board meeting and give me feedback. Someone's got to see you in it, living it, dealing with it. Okay. So if we go back to the plan, why would my number one thing not be instructional coaching and professional development when I know that's going to give me the highest change in classroom practice? So we know that that rank for Hattie is 19. Hattie tells us exactly what needs to be in place to have effective coaching. Now I'm going to drive that with the best possible drivers that Fullen says. And Fullen says it has to be systemic. You have to build capacity. You have to focus on high leverage instruction. And it has to be a group collective. It can't just come from Lisa.
How is it only 95? I mean, how is it only 19 if it's 95%?
Well, you get 95% change in classroom practice. In Hattie's rank, it's a high, it's a 19. Because number one is student self-efficacy, which you see at the very bottom. The number one determination of how student achievement is a student knowing how they're doing and people sitting down with them and talking to them about how to do it. Okay? So when you look at this, I combine the two columns of driving it, the how, with this is how we're going to implement this, the best research says. And then if you go down to where it says reallocation of resources in that column, is everyone there? Or this is the plan we've been talking about.
Page 5.
Page 5. So it says reallocation of resources. How are we going to make sure this can happen? And we have to abandon programs and positions that are not giving us a high effect in student achievement. And we have to bring in programs and positions that will. And that's what we've been talking about doing. That's the hard work that we have to do moving forward. So I took the plan that we've been talking about, the budgeting, my evaluation, and put those steps here so you could see where they came from and how it's integrated into a systemic solution. So this is how your tactical administrative team is using the past, is using research, is using data to make decisions for the future.
I'd like to say something. I hope you weren't thinking. It's asking a lot of everyone, the principals and all of the people, because the past history of, your first year out teaching, you write your lesson plans. You stay in the same grade, you can use those same lesson plans for the next 40 years. Well, no other job out there allows you to become stagnant. I work with people that thought that when they finished their internship, they had all of the knowledge that they needed for the next 20 years to do the job, and fought me when I told them, no, you have to keep learning. And so here, the data and the documentation has been laid out. Those to get the information out. And I personally, if I were a teacher, would be happy for the kick in the butt, because, hey, I can do something different than I've been doing, and it's gonna be fun. It challenges your brain.
I really believe that teachers are bringing their best to work each day. I don't think they're leaving it at home. I think
Nobody sets out to do that.
exactly. And so all of us, I think the entire team here is coming from the premise, you need the support to have your capacity built to get these breakthrough results. And so we need to make sure that you have the professional development and the coaching to live your practice. And as you read in my mid-year message, it was clear, everywhere I go, from custodian, to bus driver, to teacher, to principal, we want training and support to be better. And so that's, it's pervasive out there when I'm in the community and when I'm at our schools. We have more policy around professional development, and that's an expectation. It's in when a teacher signs a contract, when an administrator signs a contract, that they'll grow. And it's in our contract that they'll grow. So I think everyone's on the page of, we need to keep our practice going, keep sharpening, keep changing with what the expectations are. We, the administrative team, need to make sure that we provide a structure and we provide the ongoing support so that everyone gets better in their practice. Me, principals, assistant principals, teachers. This is a system-wide push because it's the system that needs improvement. Otherwise, we wouldn't have everybody yellow except for AAA and HDLF. We would have, different things. But this is a systemic issue or systemic opportunity. And we just move forward with in that way. But we are knee deep in wanting to know why this has happened so that we can abandon or provide what's needed.
I'd like to share a report that I heard once. I don't remember who said it, but there's when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. Yes. And I think that's what we're looking at.
I know we agreed not to move individual schools, but in broad terms, are you advocating, and you meaning the school district, advocating that the same programs that work at AAA or HCLA or even Sarah Vista are going to work at Arnold Park? Or for the economically disadvantaged.
I don't think it's about the student, it's about our teachers. Because at whatever capacity the child that you have to be learning, your obligation is to teach that child to the best of their ability and increase that, regardless of what deficiency they have. I think for me, labeling our kids that they're this or that or this. When you don't know what the linkers are and the capacity is there for growth, that I think is the mentality that we have to give our teachers and the empowerment that regardless of who the child is in your classroom, you're going to do regardless to get them to the next level and the next level and the next level, regardless of grade.
If, I'm gonna make some assumptions here, based on who I raised our kids with, I went with our friends who hang out with, all that other stuff. I'm gonna suggest that our life is a lot different than the typical family at Auto Park. We took time off in between kids so that, my wife took time off in between kids to really, having babies and all that other stuff. We went to every parent-teacher conference. We had to be involved in 2 activities, and we were there doing their activities and the whole bit. I'm going to say a demographic that would be different is mom and dad are both working maybe 12 hours a day and labor intensive things. They may not speak English. They definitely don't have the income levels that, not that we're rich, but for Nazis had, so on and so forth. And they were intimidated. They couldn't do sports programs because, or this would be in high school because the funds required and stuff like that. And for us not to adjust our systems, if we're not supposed to, I get it. But I'm saying my reach out to this child from that demographic versus our own, if I want to be effective, might be different. I don't know. I mean,
I just, because I'm gonna go back to this. So home environment is number 31. If we're focusing on the top 20 of most effective strategies, the home environment is number 31. The socioeconomic status is number 32. Homework is number 88. So there is a lot in our circle of influence that we can do. In fact, all of the top 20 is in our circle of influence. Whatever student falls on our doorstep, the home does not come into play until number 31. So we have tons of strategies that have been shown to have a higher effect that are in our control that have nothing to do with them.
And I think that is coming to you just from the charter school we have.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think that
but what's the point about the charter school?
The charter school has the same demographics as our apartment and they're doing well.
Yeah.
So regardless of the same environment that you're saying, these kids have a better environment versus these kids, because it's what they're receiving while they're in the classroom and that support versus whatever extra, out things within their home structure that probably doesn't equal what somebody who's in a better affluent, neighborhood versus theirs.
Some of the poorest people I know are the best parents. Some of the richest people I know are the absolute worst parents. And I'll go one further. I would say kids that go to private schools are more likely to be using drugs than those in poorer schools because they have more access to them. And that's what my observation is. But anyway, if that's where it is, 35, if we're doing top 20,
Yeah.
we're going. I didn't mean that.
I really wasn't thinking that. Because I also want to move us along.
Yes.
We're about half an hour.
I have to throw out equity. At the heart of everything we do is the idea of equity. And equity is giving each student what they need in order to reach the level that we want them to reach. So it's not equality. But I think what we're saying here is that we have to have equally strong programs throughout the system first. Then we look at the individual student, school, setting, classroom, and then we provide whatever additional supports they might need in order to reach that. And equity is at the heart of everything.
And I want to shift our thinking. We're not implementing programs. We're implementing strategy. Okay, because a program denotes something that's in a box that's purple with a purple bow that's called the silver bullet program, and it's going to go over here. It's clear
that when you implement a systemic, comprehensive strategy, those are the high effect on student achievement. And what's cool about that is that every one of our sites has the support of the district office, and the district office's role becomes to support every site in the implementation of this standardized strategy. That it does not depend on socioeconomic status, does not depend on English language development. Now, are there strategies you're going to see as we go into English language development? Yeah, there's specific English language development strategies that we will implement with our English learners. Not with our English only students, but with our English learners. And we have that all as this range. You know, it all bundled up. We've got it separated out.
And I think the consistency in the expectation, I think that's what I know in the past. It was, you know, I want to know that if I go to Sunny Slope, that I want to see the same thing at Sierra Vista. And regardless of what school you're at, you're going to get the best quality education, regardless of who's there. You know, we have amazing principals, but I think it was that consistency across our district and the expectation. So we couldn't really say, okay, well, they're teaching it this way, they're teaching it this way. How do we compare the two if they're not even really focusing on the same concepts? Right? So we can't help them be more effective. Right? So it's that uniform across the board skill set that I think everyone needs to have and be introduced to then be able to know and then talk to colleagues. Hey, how is that strategy working for you? You have a comparison. You have those outlets that you can now talk about and compare when you're really doing the same thing.
Yeah. So I would encourage the board, in this document, you look at the reallocation of resources section, because that's, as we said on page 5 of your governance, in the very beginning, the role of the board in aligning district systems and resources to ensure long-term fiscal stability. That is definitely where your role lies in helping to push forward this systemic effort. Okay. So I kind of want to push us through English language development, and then we'll take a break, and then we'll come back. Because now that you've seen how they're set up, I think that the others should move pretty quickly.
Yeah, so, because the sections are all set up the same way. The documents are
right.
Or similar.
So Lana, if you do your ELD tab, so ELD, English Language Development, and Lana, can you walk us through this table? Remember, this is a state indicator. So you just saw state indicator of English Language Arts Assessment, now state indicator of English Language Development. Okay.
So the state indicator for this is going to be measuring students' progress through what is now the California English Language Development Test, also called the CELT. Heard us use that many times. And the way they're going to measure that is students that are making a movement per year through the levels. There are 5 levels on the CELT, and the expectation is that students will move up a level every year.
The levels are at the bottom of this page.
This particular state indicator is still a bit unclear to us how they're going to measure it, because it's measuring the students that moved at least 1 level and also students that were reclassified. And it's not clear to me, so I ran it one way. It's not clear to me if those students are double counted, because if they moved a level and they were reclassified, are they counted twice or not? I counted them twice for lack of any better instruction. So these are the students. This is how and actually this is measured over 3 years. So we went back to 14, 15, 15, 16. And then when we have the results for 16, 17, they will be added. But we are just receiving those scores now, so they were not ready for inclusion yet. So you'll see here 14, 15, and 15, 16. And what the colors represent, again, the chart is behind, and it tells you what was the status in 14, 15 of what percentage of students moved one level on that assessment. And then across the top, for the following year, did you decline, stay the same, or advance? And by what percentage, and then you apply the color here. So that's what is going to be measured, are the students moving through the self, and then I will also give you the caveat that the self this is the last year of it. It will, now as we go further forward, it will only be used to test students who need to take the test for the very first time. It will be the initial assessment that you give. So it can be given anytime during the year. August, you have your kindergartners, it's the first time that they need to be assessed. They will still take the CELT. You get a newcomer that comes in February, they will take the CELT. It will be the same paper pencil test. It can be given anytime. The new test is called the LPAC, English Language Assessment.
It's okay. It's
Whatever.
It's not, okay.
As we move forward, I'll get that down. But it is going to be a new test based on the new California ELD standards that were developed at the same time as the Common Core English Language Arts standard. So they are moving to a new test. That test, right now, the CELF is given in fall. That test is going to be moved to be a spring test. The window will open in February. So next year is going to be a little odd because we're going to have some schools that we've been chosen to pilot the LPAC in March. So it'll look a little different next year. It'll be a little hard to read all the different pieces of the information.
Okay, Rob, you're inquisitive now.
Oh, no, I'm irritated that, once again, we're changing.
Oh, okay.
Not you are changing, the state is changing.
Okay, I'm
Let me
sorry.
tell
Oh
you.
my gosh.
How frustrating that is.
Yeah, so that's why I want, again, we're talking about data. To me, I can't use this data because next year I will.
Yeah, so next year will be a new base year,
Okay.
right?
So now, okay, this is perfect. So you see, so where are we? Where are we in using this data? What can it tell us? How can we use it to inform practice? And we have to look at the assessments that you saw prior for English language arts. We have to drill down and pull out our English language learners and see how they're doing in that. But your own state test is changing and is not going to be able to inform us moving forward. And the indicator of how we're being held accountable to it is different. And just know that the feds have a whole nother accountability system based on this test. It's probably the most unaligned unaligned system in our state and in our nation is English language development.
Let me ask anyone in this room this question. Do you really need a federal or state test to tell you whether a child is ready to be designated? I mean, seriously, if you're involved in educators.
You kind of do, because we can make a lot of assumptions about the way a student is presenting himself based on social language. Well, they speak English all the time. They, on the playground, fine, they can get any, but we need to measure the academic side of what they're doing is reaching fluency. And redesignation involves actually many steps.
What if that becomes one of the grades that they're receiving on their?
Well, don't get started on grades.
I was just gonna mention.
Again, from a
Grades are
parent point of view,
standardized.
that's
Yeah.
what I'm looking
Yeah, I
at.
was just
That's a whole
gonna
other
mention
system
that.
that you have to look
That we have to.
It's the standardized, what I think is proficient is not the same as what, so to standardize it, make them all an equal plane. Even with grades, especially with grades.
The CELT also gives us specific skills that a child ready to be designated needs to have and be proficient in. So that is very standardizing as well.
So you look at the, I'm sorry, Liz?
And I think the politics, like you're saying, would, go saying, you have politicians making decisions on change to education that don't have the education that it takes to teach child.
Now you know why I'm involved in politics.
So, I mean, and that's the frustration. Those are the people making the decisions that drive everybody else in this room crazy. Because there isn't really a good reason other than, okay, this isn't working, so let's do something else. and nothing coordinates. You know, these tests aren't really assessing what the CAS perhaps is looking at. So it's not, they're not aligned. So when you don't have the alignment at the state level, you know, I think that's where the districts are still struggling. So what are we testing to? To this, to that, to this? And I think that's where districts are kind of falling in the cracks because we don't really know what the expectation is, and it's always changing.
Liz, if I could wave my magic wand, we would throw all of this stuff out and we would come up with all the educators that are here and Lisa and whoever else and Lana and say, how do we, not me, because I'm not the educator, how do we know that these kids are advancing at the rate so that they can go to high school? But I know that's a box we can't play in, right? So
We're gonna get as close to the box as we can. You know me, I'm gonna go right here. Right there on the edge. Okay, so here's the strategy organizing document. Again, it's a living dynamic document, can change day to day. This is what we're using to organize our analysis of our current practices. And you'll see that where we are currently, what the types that are most effective. We do have some ELD teachers who are to be applying, ELD coaching, but it's minimal. So again, why are we not getting that high bang for our buck? We know it's a high leverage strategy. What is it with the full-in driver that we can do in order to make sure that we're really maximizing this? You see PLCs there, they're supposed to talk about PLCs. It looks like this got, do you guys have a current and a plan? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, oh, I do, I'm sorry. Thank you. So if you look at the plan, again, the implementation specifics based on the drivers, you will see that I highlighted the biggest shift we have to make here is having designated ELD time. And that's consistent. It has to be consistently implemented. There has to be a consistent understanding of it. We use English learner strategies for English learners. We're advancing the vocabulary and for our English only. I mean, this we know research is very clear needs to be in place. And then you see the instruction there, high leverage strategies to be determined. I could have just copied the metacognition, the problem solving, but there are specific ELD strategies that we will focus on to use with our English learners. And this group hasn't come together and decided on what those are yet, mostly because I haven't gotten into my Hattie book on that. And so we'll bring the Hattie book in to then see what they found to be the most high leverage strategy. Right now we're doing partner talk, we're doing sentence frames. And so we need to dive in and look at it. Those are the highest leverage pieces we should be doing. Again, for the board, the reallocation of resources, where you need to help us with that strategy or support us in that strategy, that alignment of resources, that visioning, so that we can implement this in a systematic way. So before we go to break, I'm going to give Rob a shout out because he did share with me some strategies that he thought would be really, really effective. Okay, and I thanked him and said, great. But he did share the strategy. He doesn't even know it. Didn't know it. That is the #1 indicator of student achievement. So while you may not think you're an educator, so when I read that, I went, isn't he going to be, I don't know, maybe you're not surprised, but we need to be sitting, teachers need to be conferencing with students. Because if a student thinks they can do it, a student will do it. But when they're getting constant messages that they can't, because they haven't in the past,
They won't. When they're surrounded in their classroom with charts that tell them they're behind. How would we feel if right now, all this data on your school was covering as well? So every time you walked in here, that was in your face. The way the student perceives themselves and their ability to be able to move, and that an adult knows it and talks with them, and the adult has to be the teacher. That's the number one breakthrough for student achievement.
According to that,
According to, I can tell you how many studies, like hundreds of studies. So Rob, thank you for that. Right, let's take a 15-minute break. How about 10? How about 10 minutes? We can do that. Let's come back at 10 to 11.
Elvis is great.
Great.
Call out.
I know, exactly that too.
Those are better than the ones you were in the theater.
I'm sorry. Oh, I know. Thank you. All right.
Because, I mean, we used to do that on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And the real people, we can't change.
This, I just have raised teenagers. I have.
All right.
Experience.
Thing is, really, you only have to do the Spanish.
Right,
Because
right.
there's, where my sister used to teach, she had, 57 languages
Yes.
that were spoken in her school.
Brains, intelligence, the laziness.
And the same thing with the hospital where you spoke.
But trust me, there was no going, who's gotta get home time done, that's it.
You spoke the language.
Now, that's
209.
changed.
209 studies they looked at.
And the thing was.
80,000. 80,000 students. So. I'm not taking my hat off, just.
Okay, all right, just,
Probably. Who knows? I think people want to know. There were 5,000.
Okay, perfect.
They looked at everybody wanted to say. Okay, here's like your number. So many people kept doing research to try to prove that. And they were paid for by. And he's like, no, it doesn't. He's like, there is no effect. It's very small. So it's not worth the expense. So he's like, sorry, you don't like what it says. I'm not paying for much. Nobody's paying me this, paying my paycheck.
Within the context of the program.
I know, that's what I was trying to get to the bottom of, because I said that I can buy into that even the kid that comes from single mom household, exactly like that. Single parent, mom and dad segregation. And I get fixed in that. I think it's a step on that, how the school district is. And I believe. Yeah. Well, I know that, that's not.
Say, at every school site.
That was my work. I feel safe. Good. I have something for you from Eric. Hi, sweetheart. How are you? I'm doing okay, thanks. How about you?
With that, I haven't taken a sip yet.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Did I tell you what the name
I heard, yeah.
Yeah, I know, yeah. I just decided that I need to serve another one.
Amen. Good for you. Good for you.
So maybe kindergarten Grammy.
Oh, I love you. You ready? This is from Eric.
Okay.
You ready?
Ooh, okay. No, definitely, I don't have a problem.
I'll believe it.
Because I'm happy.
Every night he's free. And the other night, I'm talking, he rationed them. He left half at Campbell and half at Hollister, and he rationed them. And then he hid them from the kids. They were in the special thing, and so he goes. He brings this to me the other day, and I go, she knows what it is. Chocolate. He's like, I will pay her. I will pay her to make these. How you doing, Grandma? Good. Yeah. I got one right now. Yeah. Yeah. That's why I was like, my little guy. I know, I was like, can I hold him? Can I hold him? Can I feed him? I'll take his diaper. And then we have the babies at 10. And we're like, yes. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I told my other one, my daughter, anytime you want a babysitter, just call me, I'll come get him. She's like, my little guy. No, you came to visit. You came to visit,
Yeah, some of them sit there for like weeks.
I don't want to find this apartment here. There's an apartment blocks away from my house. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God.
It is. They say it's only 4 weeks.
I love it. Yeah. I don't know. You're so free. Aren't you so cool? Yeah. I was stressed. This is colicky. It's just like, oh my God. Like, I love her. Jacob, my moose is bottle fed, but that one's I guess a little bit more colicky. Unfortunately, it's not. So she's had a little bit more of a, Yeah, you're working definitely. Yeah. Yeah.
Running all the way around. No, it's not about rattling, but
Now it's
Dad said you tell me what they do and
I'm gonna go next to them. I'm gonna go.
They tend to stay a week, maybe a month. I think they'll probably. That's separate. They use
Always empowering our principals with conversations with after, I see us like, in a gym, I don't know if we got fit, but, just sitting down with our teachers and looking at this.
Oh, yeah, that was gone by like
All of them. Like.
That was like 30 minutes ago, like 8:45. Not bad. It was like a retro hotel. So it was like built in like the 50s. And they upgraded nicely. I was talking with Dr. Andrew when I was pulling up. I was like, I knew I was close because the GPS. I was like, I wonder where it is. And there's this giant like 50 or 60 foot like tower that says Flamingo Hotel with like a rotating neon. Yeah. Have you ever seen it?
No, but I would say go check where it is.
Yeah. I was like, well, I think I see it. So yeah, I mean, it wasn't bad. It was really weird. I stayed at a hotel by myself. It was like, maybe ever. You know, it's like, travel by myself. Yeah. Very strange. Very strange thing. But no, I mean, it was nice. I've been recently in a hotel with a conference in. You know, it's like, oh, you know, we're having a conference. We'll be back in 3 minutes. You know, it's strange. It's like the way the hotel was set up. So, but I mean, it was nice, and the business center was nice. I mean, it's actually a gym that's not associated with the hotel, but you get a part of your room. So it was nice. If there's ever one there again, I recommend it. So the restaurant wasn't bad.
So you go to Australia?
Right. That's why it has to be cultural.
Good deal.
That's the way
Good
it
deal.
is.
How you doing?
Oh, So we'll come back and look at math. So state indicator, ELA English Language Arts Assessment, state indicator, English Language Development, reclassification, state indicator, math assessment. So now we're behind the math hub, and Lana, can you walk us through the table for the state test?
The setup is exactly the same as we looked at for English Language Arts. As you look at the colors as a whole, you can see that the decision for our focus this year to be math during our collaboration time, district-wide collaboration time, is justified. And we see that we have here 2 subgroups that need some particular focus. The English learner subgroup, which is interesting to me that as a whole, our English learners are doing better in language arts than they are in math. And I think that plays into the falsehood that math is not as language-based. That is just not true anymore, right? So we need to be attending to that and knowing that our English learners need math language development as well as anything else. And then again, our students with disabilities subgroup shows that they need some tender loving care as well. So set up exactly with the colors. If you look at the chart behind, you'll see that that is the chart that I based the colors on. Applied to our data.
So are we separating out our ELD and math groups, or are we still keeping them in the same environment as the rest of the state?
The English learners are in just in the regular math classes. Doesn't exist a math ELD separate from ELD. It just points out to us that ELD can't just be about having access to the English Language Arts program. There has to be cross-content.
culture vocabulary and still understand what that vocabulary is asking of you in that. And so if we're looking at, those are kind of what our weak points are with our ELDs. It won't be the case with our regular ed students. So then what are we going to do in that same study that we can kind of add that to the menu of things without kind of making it boring for the other kids that know what this word means, but our English learner doesn't.
It's actually even beyond vocabulary, of course, is always important, but it's even beyond that, because if you look at the task practice tests and the interims and what we have access to, you see that the complexity of the language that's used in the presentation of the math problems. I mean, some of these are like the performance tasks. The one that I remember from the practice test was, it's a whole scenario about building a rabbit hutch.
Right.
So you have to be able to read and understand everything that's being asked within this whole, in fact, we looked at that very 2 years ago, and then understand what's being asked of you to do, and then do the math.
Right.
So it's very complex. So we can see it right here, and we need to attend to that and determine what strategies are we going to use to support students with that piece. Because the math is hard too, but much less the language.
Something at the Institute where they said, and when I attended, they were talking just about a performance task where the kids were going to the zoo. You had this, and the kids got hung up on going to the zoo, not on the math. So
Right.
the kids get hung up on what's a rabbit hutch, or is a rabbit hutch, and they're visualizing all these. It's like, move beyond that. And it's actually, so it's actually the case with some of our English learners where they get lost in having to understand what a rabbit hutch is rather than pulling out the math, because they're so used to like deciphering language. Like, what is that? That's a thing. And how, yet we want to put math in real world terms, right? Everyone says, put it in real world terms. Oh, you're going to the zoo. And you're like, one, I've never been to a zoo.
Right.
Two, that's the kind of zoo you've been to.
Right.
And so it's like, well, maybe it shouldn't be a real world situation. Maybe it should just be the straight math. And so there's a lot of that going on, and especially for our English language learners that are trying to even figure out what this means in Spanish.
And so then followed by that is the benchmark test, and you will see, again, it's basically first through fifth on this one, because first grade is following the textbook tests at this time, and we're able to take them online, so we can put them into this report. And they take 4 benchmarks per year because they're following the textbook right now. So that's why they already have 2. You'll see the first 2 blue columns. Again, what we're focusing on in our district-wide PLC time, or our collaboration time, is looking at the rigor of what we're seeing here with our Blueberry Pie in first grade, and then in second grade, and then suddenly we hit third grade. We can see that we're not building to the rigor that the students are going to need in third grade. So we are constantly reworking the benchmarks. Now that we have more information about how the Smarter Balanced Assessment questions are constructed, we are actually training the teachers in that item specification and item development, and having them go back, even in first grade, even in kindergarten. You're building towards this in third grade where they have to take this test. What can you do here to support? Because the math textbook by itself is not cutting it. So what are we going to do? Now we can better understand how these items are being developed. And now we can, with that information, start building tests that will be better predictive and give us an idea that the students are moving towards the rigor that needs to be had in third grade.
This is a place where I want to make a case in point about curriculum. This is a perfect example of, I follow the curriculum. This is what the book tells me to do. I'm a teacher. Okay? I follow the curriculum. I'm marching through the book. This is state adopted. This is what I'm supposed to deliver. And my kids are doing great. I'm marching through it, marching through it. And then all of a sudden, I go take a state test in third grade,
and kids aren't able to succeed. And this tells us that the curriculum in and of itself cannot drive the entire program that we give to the student. This is a shift for a lot of our teachers because we're coming out of the era of today everyone's on page 3 and it's 12:02, everyone should be on page 3. Then I walk to the next classroom and it's 12:04 and they should be on page 3. We're coming out of that era. And that we have to acknowledge that, you know, that's what our teachers have been told to do. Some of them coming out of college being trained to do that. So we have to reset that expectation based on data and then provide them with the tools. So if it's not just my curriculum, my math book, what needs to be supplemented? And every teacher shouldn't have to figure that out on their own, which is why they need to come together in those district collaboration days to say what are the best supplemental materials to put with the adoption so that we're also getting the results we need to get. It's not just about this is how you need to perform on a test. I mean, we could say that, but it's not. For me, my belief is that the Common Core is asking us to prepare students as thinkers and problem solvers. Different than being able to complete a worksheet. Okay, we are preparing students for a different type of showing of proficiency. And I don't think that's a bad thing. Okay? I think that's what calls for. But this shows us that we cannot just hand the teacher the teacher's guide and all the workbooks and say, go at it, and the kids will be fine. There needs to be a lot more added to that. Thanks.
So, I hope this is a data point, but I suspect it's not. But how old is this data that we're looking at? When was this benchmark for?
October.
October. So, just out of curiosity, did we have a reaction to this immediately from the district point of view or otherwise, and said, I mean, we're going to go photocopy whatever the right supplement was and make sure, because I mean, this is 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, right? Yeah, that fell off.
I think that's a great conversation to have with the site administrators, how they dealt with this data at first time.
What changed as a result?
So when you get the teachers are just immediately, as the scores are coming in, they're immediately going to look at it. So at our site, we started going into PLCs immediately and reviewed the data, looked at the results, and started picking apart where kids were falling down, and immediately started putting them into intervention groups.
And have we had an intermediate assessment since then?
It's next
Next week.
Next week.
Next week is the second midterm.
Except for that, along the way, they're also developing formative assessments along the way. So when they get into, let's say, this group is doing a reteach of this standard, then at some point they will come together and take another little mini assessment, a formative assessment, and find out how much further they've moved along. So that's what we're doing in
What I'm looking for is so I'm a parent of the school district now, yes. And, but if I saw this and I was the principal, I'm not looking at all the principals here, to me, this would be one of the, if this was an indicator of behavior or something bad happened, I know that Lisa would send us board members, here's what happened. You know, a kid did something wrong and please recall. To me, this is just as egregious as, you know, it's an event. And did the elementary school teachers in this case, or principals, get right involved with the PLC and say, hey, we need to fix this now, and how will our school board know that you're on a path to fixing it? I mean, a principal, I assume, come up to the classroom and help the teachers do assessments.
So Rob, with like Kevin, what we did is, in looking at those results, we took it as a wake-up call. Teachers and teams went and looked at benchmarks, looked at the types of questions, looked at our textbooks, our pacing guides, and have actively re-examined the standards and are now looking at the way we're teaching the text, how it reflects to the way the standards will be asked on the CAST and also the benchmark. And we have now made and changed lesson plans. We've taken 3 sub-days to work and build that curriculum along with teacher early out days that we're working on earlier in PLCs. And we have remodeled our curriculum between now and the second benchmark. So teachers, and we're part of that together too, have shifted the curriculum to match and to meet what we're being asked to look at. And students are then having many pre and post tests based on the standards we're teaching, and we're getting some really good results. We're excited about the next benchmark.
So you're answering the question with a lot of complex things. So the train is getting back on the rails.
100%.
In your opinion.
We looked at the question, we've changed what we're teaching, how we're teaching it, and we're testing along the way to make sure students can answer. Learning math is learning the concept of the math, but also learning it the way they're being asked, and looking at that transition from we are teaching it, but are students able to take that concept and answer in the complex way the questions are being asked, because the state test is asking us to look at things in a deeper and more thoughtful way. And so we transitioned that based on this data. We took it as a wake-up call. We need to really look at what we're teaching, how we're teaching.
Okay, and I would love to hear from my fellow school board members. Do you agree with me that when stuff like this happens, I mean, this was an October measurement, and it obviously shows that something's wrong in our system, not the teachers, not the principals, but curriculum wrong or whatever, that we want to hear about it and know that something's being done.
I agree with you, Rob. And I think that's the whole point of, having, these elevated positions to really look at the data at the district level. You're getting the results from the local level, but at the district level, what are we going to do to support our principals and eventually our teachers to improve this? Because regardless of the coloring, I think we should all be looking at what can we do to improve. Because if we're basing it off just colored red, of course, it's like, oh my God, you're in panic mode. But regardless, for me, it shouldn't even matter the color. I think we should still be striving every single time as we're running these reports to say, you know what, we need to do better. We need to do better every single time, so that, and what is it that it will take? And I think it's that understanding from the teachers, what is it going to take? Where are they not getting their marks? What change in curriculum? How can the principals better assist you in the classroom to ensure that these kids are getting the mark?
I think we're saying the same thing, but what I'm looking at is not colors, but numbers, where I'm saying we went from 360 being standard exceeded to a dramatic 38, then 127, and it's just, something happened specific to this thing. So
You're talking between math grade second grade, math grade third.
yeah.
I agree with Rob in the sense that it helps educate us, right? We're making decisions. It's for obviously the best interest of our school to understand what we're making decisions over. And when it comes to curriculum, or that's you guys' job, but when it comes to how we're going to help you, we have to have your thoughts.
For us, I think, for what you just said a few minutes ago, we, at least at our school, and I think I can see for most of us, we've gone from a culture of, we're still, like you said, oh yeah, everybody knows the common core standards, but we're still working on that. And we're still working on designing all the instruction based on the standard and not just going through book. Because especially at our school, where we have the 2 teachers every day, the books really help to keep the alignment kind of going between in the program of English and Spanish. And so for us, it's cutting loose from those books, and that's what we're doing those early out days, is to sort of like be able to look at, well, the standards, they're not like the book didn't include those standards. It hadn't helped us teach those standards. So what do we have to do? And that's what we're doing right now in those early out days. But I am around the first grade team, and Yeah, the scores look really good because the benchmark was taken from the book itself, you know, so it's gonna match.
You know, I taught pages 4 through 10, and then I took a test on page 11, and that's what you see in first grade and second grade. Third grade, I taught pages 4 through 10, and then I took this test out of an item bank that our state test lab, and my kids scored only 30% of them met. That's what this data is telling us. So we need, one, that teaching in the book, teaching marching along the book is not getting us the kind of thinking that we need to have in our students. And two, the item banks that we're using, what we're using to assess first and second graders is not rigorous enough. It needs to mirror all along. And that's all I can make of looking at this data across. And Rob, you bring up the whole premise of a professional learning community and why it's number 3. Because if implementing the professional learning community the way that it's intended, that exact thing would happen. You would get this data and you'd say, let's dissect this. What are we changing in order to meet the needs this week? Because they have a lot of PLC time. The district has put that structure, the district meaning everybody, has put that structure in place for teachers, and it's valued. It's what happens with the data that they have and the changes that they're making the next day, the next week, is where we need to tighten up. Yeah.
Again, I'd love to hear my fellow board members weigh in when stuff like this happens, early warning to us so that we, again, just know that you are aware of it.
So we can, one of the things we've talked about, and I want to end this with, do you want to continue hearing from each school site every month? Or would you rather we do a cumulative, here's where the district data is now, here's how we've reacted to it as a district? So we don't know, that's for the end, to kind of think about where we want to go, and we don't have to make a decision forever and ever, but going forward for the rest of this year, what would be most helpful? And then we can recalibrate again, how should we be reporting out in the following year? I am going to ask you that, to keep it back here.
I have, listening to all that's being said, and with my background, it's a big science experiment. The only problem is we can't, it takes too long to get the results to make one variable change at a time, the way you should. So, I mean, in microbiology, it was, you know, overnight you do an experiment, you find out the next day what you got. But here, I think getting the data every test period may not be as effective as looking at the whole year, or even 6 months, because sometimes experiments just fail for no reason. You repeat it with the exact same thing, and you get a different answer. And then you figure out, okay, which one's right, so you do it again. So, I mean, you could have an up and down, up and down, up and down, if you're looking at every test period. And you're getting a false picture when things are going up and down, up and down, up and down. Sort of like the stock market.
So I want to come back around to it at the end to see like what we want to do moving forward, get some more.
The other comment that I have, and regarding that math problem of the
Bunny
zoo
punch
and
in the zoo?
Do we have an issue with a cultural bias?
Of course. Absolutely. The answer is,
I mean, if a kid doesn't know what a rabbit punch is, that's not in their life experiences.
absolutely.
I mean, whereas
Tell me
another one
a box.
for a white kid might not be, you know, you're talking about the beats in something in a mariachi band. For me, that would be totally over my head because, one, I don't know music. Two, I have never taken an appreciation course that would allow me to appreciate that.
Mhm.
So, I mean, is this what the state is writing to
Yeah.
you?
There's economic bias there as well.
I'm sorry?
There's economic bias there as well.
I'm sure there
Students
is.
from, that live in poverty
Yeah.
may not have a rabbit hutch either.
Or a student who lives in Beverly Hills may not know
May
what
not
a rabbit
have a rabbit hutch.
To be honest.
They've probably at least seen a movie with a rabbit hutch.
Yeah.
But I think what Rob was saying is data driving what we're doing on a daily basis. I think it helps the board really we're doing today gives us a better insight of what you all are doing. And so we don't come to these predetermined ideas about, you know, this or that, or, you know, those little pictures of just insight really gives us a clear picture of all the hard work that you guys are doing. And that includes your teachers. So, and that just really, you know, when we're sitting up there and we're looking at data throughout the year, it's not the same as what we're doing today. This has, you have that buy-in. We're all in this together. And it's not us being, and I know our role is up here, but there are times that this knowledge is so much more important for us as board members because this really enforces the decisions that we make at that dais. And know that this is why we're doing what we need to do. And this is what we're able to communicate when we're out in the community as board members and representing our district and all the great things that we are doing.
And that gets to the, Lisa asking the question, do we just look at the school district altogether or individual schools? If we, now politicians coming out, if we go to district elections, you know, 5 different things, each school is going to become important, you know, on that level.
Right.
And again, I think that because we have such disparities like between the AAA and HCLA and the other schools, I think that at least at some level seeing that individual data and holding the principals accountable. So
It's holding everybody accountable.
Yeah.
I don't think it's just the principals, and even us.
well,
Because who you
again,
hold,
straight
right,
well,
right, who you, Rob, hold accountable is me.
Yeah.
And so it's like,
I'm very sensitive to that. and I
yeah,
agree.
so you hold me accountable and then I hold them accountable and they hold teachers accountable. So, yeah, that's the
Also,
the way it's helped, yeah. Yeah. Okay, so the next one is again that organizer that we're using to analyze our current strategy and where it ranks, how that's been implemented in math, and then what is planned. And you'll see as you go through the top 20 influencers of student achievement, the top 20 strategies that have the highest effect are not subject specific, which is great. Because what it says is build a foundation of going about the business of professional development and instructional coaching and providing materials and setting goals with students, that the processes are the same no matter the content. Those high leverage teaching strategies are going to be different, right? And so making sure that, and what should be in the curriculum needs to be different. So knowing the places where when we teach teachers, when we teach administrators, when I learn that this is a foundational process no matter what you're delivering. However, the what of it needs to be content specific. And that's the good news, because you can really invest in those foundational pieces and then go deeply with the specifics. So if you looked at the plan, and you will see again under instruction, the high leverage strategies, we're working in those because we're going to look at the Hattie research on mathematics and make sure that we have the high leverage strategies in there. and use our materials and the high leverage strategies together to plan the daily instruction. And then you see the reallocation of resources. That is going to be very similar to what you see under English language arts because of the structures. The biggest difference being we're going to have $1 million adoption of EL, English language arts, and English language development materials this year. But that means we need to go back and fortify math. We need to make sure that our teachers get some in-depth training on the math curriculum and on math strategies. And we can't do it all at the same time.
That builds one and the other, according to what I understand. Is your math is no longer just a page of numbers. You add and subtract.
Exactly.
You have a life situation where we use math every day.
Yes. Yes. So we're going to, when we focus on language, it's going to improve math.
Yeah.
Because especially now, because math is so language rich. So it's not going to be for naught. We will see, and I've seen that happen in other systems. When I've seen it go both ways. I've seen when you've really gone deeply in math that your reading scores went up. Because if you go deeply in math, you're focusing on language. And then I've seen when you go deeply in English language arts and language development, your math goes up because you're focused on language. So I'm feeling confident moving forward that focusing is what to do. And you're going to get a bump. You're going to go up in everything because everything we do is so language rich. So that is mathematics achievement, English language arts achievement, and the English language development achievement. So those three stated indicators.
I have a comment along supporting the child, supporting the family as we increase their language development. Is there someone, Gavin, that I noticed there was going to be some conversation with them on using some of the facilities here.
I don't know that everyone here knows what you're talking about.
Oh, well, can I say it yet? Anyway, having some resources available to the parents of the children that are English language learners. Because I know that I've worked with people from all different countries, and those whose children spoke only definitely were easy to understand on the phone phones, and were able to converse with their coworkers in a more effective manner. So I mean, if you can move some of the knowledge of the children to help the parents in their mastery of the language. I don't know.
One of the, in the next section, in culture and climate, one of the things we're going to talk about is our parent outreach coordinator. So maybe that'll help bring it a little bit closer together.
I think that's the other thing too, since we have funding specific for migrant, we have Title I, that we're not, I think it's bringing them into a fold as well and helping them develop their DSAs, like for migrants, developing a DSA that really augments the focus on those kids, and we're not supplanting. We're truly providing that extra support within the structure of their program.
Right.
But I think working and developing it and really tapping into those resources that are really, I mean, Hollister School District is the biggest generator in migrant funds for Region 1. And I think we could do so much more with that population that we haven't done before. But it's, I think, talking to that person and helping them develop those ideas that would just strengthen everything we're doing. And it's just a layer of
awesome icing on this cake, and I think that's what I would love to see with all these different programs, is that we're able to do a little bit more for that subgroup, a little bit more for that subgroup specific, because we can't intermingle. Not every migrant student, or not every ELD student is a migrant student. So, there's that misconception, they're ELD, they're migrant.
That's
not the
your
case.
government concentration.
Correct, and that, along with that, but I think developing and helping those programs move along to help with this extra funding would really just, I think, reinforce everything that we're trying to do.
So you just gave a plug for the reallocation of resources, right? And so those are the things that we're thinking about, is how do we leverage these funds? And leveraging meaning we use this fund to leverage that fund to do more.
Right.
This to leverage this one to do more. That's what leveraging means. So how do we leverage all these buckets of money to get us the biggest bang for student achievement? And so that is exactly what we're doing. And it's like, okay, this pot can only be used for this. But if we put this on top of this one, or we put it alongside of this one, it's going to be maximized twofold.
Correct.
And so that's what the whole reallocation is about. And so that it's not siloed, well, we'll just do this over here. Well, what's going on over there?
Right.
That whatever's going on over there should be supported by what's going on over here. Title I should be supporting migrants, should be supporting Title III. And so that our base program truly is our unrestricted, which is teacher salary, right? But all these others are supplemental funds that are meant to supplement the base program, not be the base program, right? All right, let's go on to section 2, which is culture and climate. Remember, that is culture and climate. We're going to look at the first indicator is suspensions. So you've been seeing this data. And so this is by site, again, using the state indicator color coding. The percent, the rate of suspension for the last 3 years and the direction it's been moving. You have the table there, and then you have the graph below. Dennis, you want to tell us what you pulled together here?
So unlike the previous data where you looked at various demographic groups or grade levels, so on, these are all at the school level. So this is you're rising up a little higher, so to speak, in terms of the way that we're looking at all of these different sorts of things. The suspension rates, or the suspension percent, is basically how many suspensions do you have divided by how many students are in the school. So if a student gets suspended twice, they get counted twice, and that's just 2 different suspensions. Not the number of students, it's how many suspensions do you have divided by the number of students in the school that could be suspended. We can drill down into these data, and look at how many of this ethnic group and so on and so forth. I mean, even though 50% of our students are boys and 50% of our students are girls, that's not the way the suspensions break down. The vast majority of the suspensions are boys, for example, and so on. That's part of the reality. But right now, what we're just looking at here, and you can see it by school site, down towards the bottom of the chart at the top of the page. You also have the Halter Prep School, the district as a whole, and the state of California. State of California, because it's aggregating data from all the different districts, is always sort of behind. We can access our own computer databases and pull up the information really quickly from us, but the state of California, we don't always have. The data in the table at the top are the same down below, just presented as histograms in case people like to look at things that way. One important point about the 16-17 suspension rate, those are as of January 30th, right, the end of January. So if you have whatever the percentage is, they're likely to be pretty good. If a given school said, okay, I'm not going to, no more suspensions for the rest of the year, that's going to be their number. But if the suspensions occur, then the number will change as the year goes on, and we're only 100 days into the year, well, only, but halfway, more than halfway through the year. So, but nevertheless, we had to make a call, and the call was, okay, what does it look like today, right now? And are our suspension rates going up or going down and so forth? And you can see that we've made a major effort in the district to focus on ways of modifying student behavior so that we don't have to suspend students. It's not that we're just letting them get away with murder and not suspending them. We are putting them in a position where they're making better choices and doing the kind of things that they should be doing to enhance their own education. And the consequence of that, we've also reduced the number of suspensions over the past few years. So that's it right there. And again, the next few pages are just the color codes. What's different here as well is that the color codes that you looked at before, this many percent meeting or achieving standards and so forth, they are the same color codes basically for every student in the state. Here, Calaveras and Cerro Vista and Sunnyslope being elementary schools have a different color chart than Mays and Rancho, which are middle schools, and those schools have a different color chart than the entire district does, which is an elementary district of K-8 and so on. So even though you might see the colors that you got, it doesn't necessarily mean you can compare them directly. I would point out with APS, and most people realize this, but they've been adding a grade level every year. So in 16-17, they're K through 5. Last year they were K through 4. In 14-15, they were K through 3. The year before that, they were K through 2. You tend to not get suspensions with kindergartners and second grade. So their numbers are likely to be low. And if they're just there as a reference, but you can't really draw too much from that because they don't have students who tend to be more problematic as they get into adolescence. Any questions on the suspensions? The board member?
For me personally, I know this type of information can be manipulated. And I'll tell you how I know that, because of where I work. And because of knowing specific students and situations and then not seeing it documented. So that's my concern, is that I want to make sure that our picture, because I don't, we're concerned about where we're falling here, but if we're not really addressing the situation and we're manipulating the data to make us look better than what we are, that's concern. So I just want to put it out there because I know it's going on right now at the high school, and that just doesn't help us when we're not really looking at the data the way we should be, and really assessing our kids' needs and discipline. Because if we're going to manipulate the data to make us look better than we are, we're not helping. We're not truly fixing what we need to fix. And this is a key piece of what the state is looking at. So we also need to be honest and truthful about that and know, okay, if I'm having more of a suspension rate, what is it around and why? I mean, that was the whole point of bringing Capturing Kids' Hearts, was to really look at true data, what's really happening in our schools, and then being able to apply a different concept to help your kids learn and be better human beings, to treat each other, so that we're not having these situations of bullying. That is like, I don't think one situation is too much. And the things that are happening this year is very disconcerting with our kids and how they're feeling, and feeling that they have to take their own life because they've been bullied. And that's just not okay. And I think nobody should be okay with that in our district. So this is a big deal for me, because I don't want the data to truly, I want it to be reflective of what is going on in our school. And I want us to really, really do what we need to do for our kids when they're in crisis. Because these kids are acting out for a reason. We just got to figure out why.
This, I was gonna just, we took our exposure, the higher, or the, whatever, the green and the blue. And, I just know from who I am with the kids that are in trouble, the couple of kids that were suspended since I've been in HCLA were the code stuff that wasn't. And not just because they were acting out or disruptive or whatever, and those guys had that time with me, and we spent I mean, I spent pouring into those kids, and I'm pouring into them as of yesterday at 4 o'clock. And so, I just think that, I can tell you that, what my criteria is the legal, the ed code that I can attach to a behavior that's pretty rare in our school. But, you know, I'm kind of speaking so you know that it's not just because I don't get, they refer to suspensions, it's really truly because that's the way we operate.
If our discipline programs are working, what I would assume I would see is more suspensions in the beginning of the year and less towards the end, as kids learn that certain behavior is not acceptable. I don't care if suspensions or what, whatever it is. Liz's comments notwithstanding, I'm more concerned with the greater body. If you have a belligerent child in the classroom that is, let's say it's a classroom of 25 kids, and one kid is causing learning not to occur for the other 24, I don't want the principals to hesitate on acting on it. I don't care how you act on it, just take care of the problem. I tend to want to bring parents in, but I'm more used to the rural school districts where that might be more effective. But this data, is only real if we're going to fix the problem. And I don't see any big problem. There's some numbers that stand out there to me. And I guess I want to know, more about that. But to me, that's where it says the superintendent should be looking in and say, what's different on this school campus than the similar campus over here? But I don't want you to be afraid to discipline when you, as a professional, think it's appropriate. But we do need to see the data because it does impact the academic outcomes.
So let's go ahead and move to
The next
the expulsion.
The expulsion, yes. Again, this is another state indicator, and these data are the data, with the exception of just this year, that are reported to the state. All the suspension data and expulsion data are reported to the state. And you can see it's the actual numbers of expulsions are on the left-hand side. So even in a really active year, like we had a few years back, we didn't have only 10 expulsions. But now we're down to just one. I don't know why the graph kind of like pops it up a little bit above the line. So for example, the HSE right now, it looks like it's 1.5, but it's really 1. So the graph, just the way the graph
Little
popped out of the
purple
computer.
Purple bar got a little.
Yeah.
Maybe there's one on the horizon.
Well,
Which there is,
there's always-
so. I think it's being a little.
That's a Illinois child.
Yeah. There's one on the horizon.
Expulsions are also governed, just like suspensions are, by ed code. They're not just things you can just invent or decide to do. But on the other hand, we're doing everything that we can to keep the number of expulsions minimal. And this is just the history. These data are just what they are. There's really nothing much to say about them. This is what happens. Most the students who get expelled here because they've made a really bad choice individually, and pretty much we have almost always no choice but to follow the law.
Does this include when you have a threat of an expulsion and the parent pulls the kid voluntarily?
No, these
are actual ones that the board has
right.
that we expelled this kid.
This is when the board voted to expel the student. If in our district, if we're in motion to expel a student and the parent says, I'm pulling this kid out of school, we still go through with the expulsion because we have an obligation to all the schools in the state of California to make a determination about that student. Oh, the axe murderer moved away. We don't care. It's like, no, we have to make a decision about this student if they were our student and they committed the infraction. Because their expulsion status has to be communicated to the other districts where they move to. mean, right now, we've got a student coming goes from another district who is expelled there. The board's gonna have to decide whether that student gets to come to our school or not come to our school. That's a board decision. And that other district made the decision to expel that student. We have to live by it, and we have to do the same thing. So
let me,
parents can't yank their kid they can yank them out of school, but they can't yank them out of that process.
wow, I mean, I don't know if that's for this meeting or not, but I gotta tell you that, that concerns me.
Yeah, we'll do some background with how expulsion would go, about the county, about the state, just what the laws are governing that, and how we go about looking at it.
An expulsion is a really, really big deal, and it's pages of law about how it needs to happen. So,
If a parent voluntarily pulls for us to continue the education of that is a concern. Anyway.
We can look down there.
Yeah.
So the next
I'll be glad
one,
to explain that.
remember the state, we have a state indicator about chronic absenteeism. Right?
Well, this is, attendance.
So the next one is first the student attendance, because of course we look at that first, that attendance rate, and then we drill down into chronic absenteeism. So Dennis, student attendance.
The next page then is student attendance, which is the percent of students that are there on all possible days that they can be there, right? So basically, and this is also from our computer databases, and so it deals with the fact that the student didn't enroll until the middle of October, or the student left early, all those kinds of things are being done. I will say here, though, that the colors, Dennis made up the colors, so to speak, for this chart. As we get used to these colors, you're going to realize, okay, blue is really good or high or positive or whatever, and red is on the opposite side. And so taking, and I'd have to look back at but basically a middle of the road approach where 95% was a yellow. And then better than that kind of moved you up towards the green and the blue, and below that moved you down towards the orange and the red. And it's just visually, that's where it's at. You can see, again, 16, 17 student attendances as of the end of January, and that's where it's at right this minute. If, and holding that steady or improving that or increasing that are things that need to happen. At the bottom, again on the graph, both for Hollister Prep School and the state, the district, I looked and looked and looked. The state does not report any kind of statewide student attendance data like this. In other words, how many kids actually comes. I have absolutely no idea whether Hollister is doing well regarding in comparison to the entire state of California, and or
the state attendance rate is about 89%.
What's that?
The state attendance rate is about 89%.
89%. It's not anywhere online. We can just say state attendance rate to find out, but you could probably pull their databases and do all that work, but I didn't do that. In any case, this is what it looks like here attendance-wise. Our state attendance, our district attendance is pretty good, but it can always improve up to a point. You don't want 100% attendance, obviously, because then that means sick people are coming to school, and that's going to backfire on you. You get 100% attendance for 2 months, then you're going to have an epidemic, and you're going to drop down because sick kids need to stay home. The next page is chronic absenteeism. This is a new measure by the state. Look at the bottom of the page. Chronic absenteeism is defined as the percentage of students being absent for any reason for 10% or more of the days in the school year. And then again, 16, 17 are calculated up to the end of January. And again, the colors are just as a rough and ready, just to pick some numbers just to sort of see it and not to haul anything out. But the logic behind it, as I understand it, and this is a new measure that hasn't been collected, so we've actually drilled down through our areas and infinite campus databases to get these numbers over the past several years. But regardless of the reason that the student's not in school, if they're not in school, they're not there to learn, and so therefore chronic absenteeism is something to look at. But I need to stress that chronic absenteeism, even though it's presented here by schools and so forth, depends on many, many factors outside of schools. Some communities are literally more healthy than others. Some places people live, or parts of parts of the community might not be as healthy. There might be other reasons why students are out, but if you're sick a lot, you're still going to show up in this number. If you are suspended a lot, you're going to show up in this number. I mean, those kind of things all roll into this number. So brand new, it hasn't been used yet statewide as an indicator. This is going to be the first year, I believe, that it'll be collected in the CalPADS reporting system. And so what that means is we'll be hearing more and more about it as time goes on. Just since it is coming up and it is something that the board will be given from as part of state reports, we put it in here now to just take a look at it and so on. But the colors again are totally Genesis, just to give you a spread of colors on the page, as it were, as opposed to calling them all green or something else.
Now let's look at our teachers. How our teachers are attending.
So
before we get to that, if the question is, studies, we want to see this data. I know that this board member does, and by school, not by.
Yeah. Absolutely.
that's easy to fold. Just now that we've done it for all the old years, it's really easy to keep track of going forward. The tough part was digging through all of the years in the past. Another important measure that affects student achievement is how often or not often are the teachers in the classroom to do the teaching. Even if the student comes every day, if the teachers aren't there every day, then that is an issue as well. Teachers can be absent from the classroom for a lot of reasons. One of them being that they're not really off work that day. They're someplace else at professional development or achieving training and so on and so forth. What this is intended to just give the board a sense of is what are the percentages, and they're expressed the same way. And again, the colors are just colors to color on the page. They're not anything from the state. But what's the percentage attendance of teachers just looking at absences due to the things that they control themselves? Teachers can call in sick. Whether they're sick or not, they can call in sick. They can call in for personal necessity, which has a number of legal reasons, one of them being their child is sick, or a tree fell down on the roof of my house and I have to take care of that today, or the water heater broke. That's personal necessity. And the last one, contractually and ed code wise, is discretionary, which is the so-called no-tell days. I'm just not coming in today.
How many no-tell days do you have?
In the contract for the teachers, they're allowed five. They're allowed 5 a year. But if they're allowed 5, but they're taking more than 3 in a row, they have to tell us. So they have to tell us why. So in other words, I need to go to, or I want to go to Michigan because my son graduated from Michigan State and it's 5 and that, so we would know that kind of thing. But in the strictest sense, if they were just taking 5, one here, one here, one here, one here, one here, they wouldn't have to tell us anything. They just would call them discretionary day. So, but those days come out of their sick day. They're not added on. Each teacher every year receives 10 sick days, and these days come out of that bank. Nevertheless, for those reasons, this is what it looks like at the different sites, and you can see the graph at the bottom just for people who like histograms, and you can and take a look at the different sites and district as well.
Okay, let's look at it by day of the week.
So that's the next graph is that. The colors here are just the one chosen by the computer that has nothing to do with these other colors. But basically, this is over the time period. So we went back to the beginning of the school year in 2014-15. So this is almost 500 days of potential work, 485 or some number like that. And this is what the trend is at the different school sites. Of course, the teachers have moved from site to site, and all kinds of things that happened over that time. But this is the picture from the 10,000, 20,000 foot kind of view. Obviously, Fridays are not a popular day to decide I'm not coming to work. You might have good reasons, but nevertheless, I don't think that this works.
So, what would be helpful, I think, and again, I'd like fellow board members to weigh in, is for this information to be also presented in terms of number of days. Because percentages is one way of looking at it, but again, married to a teacher, I have 2 teachers in my immediate, 3 teachers, I guess now, in my immediate family, plus the extended family. And, you know, those teachers will tell you, there's nothing like having a teacher in the classroom when you have a substitute in there. So this is sort of alarming because I believe this would mean on average, a teacher is out 7 days a year on a 180-day work year, because that's her work year, right? So that's a huge amount of number of days.
It could be out 10, right? 5 discretionary and 5, they get 10 total. So they can have 5 of them be discretionary and the other 5, they have to tell us if it's sick or personal necessity, right?
I mean, yeah, and that Friday thing is,
Changing it to at the baseline days, in other words, absent, 8 days out of 180, something like that.
I mean,
Yeah.
principals can pull this by teacher.
yeah, but I doubt you want us to look at the.
No, you wouldn't look at that. Principals know that. Principals can pull that.
Yeah, and, but I, you know, I want the other board members to weigh in on this because it's going to be a sensitive thing, but the number of days out of the classroom is huge in my world.
Well, like Lisa said, what does that data show? If you find out, you know, something that's maxing, that's taking the total 10, for whatever reason, what is the outcome of that on their performance? Or how do you measure that?
It's well, to me, it's an indicator of the culture of the school.
Yeah, and that too ties to that. I'm just saying, like, to what extent are they being successful? If you have a teacher that's out 10 days, but the class is doing really well, then it just begs more questions, right? So, but it would definitely define a little bit better, the culture.
No, a lot of this also falls into negotiations. And so you're kind of stepping into that world of what they want to control, what rights they have versus their performance. And as principals, they're evaluated, I'm assuming, on also their attendance. So, and how that affected, you know, the student, their overall performance in the classroom throughout the year. So that would be the only way that I think having a common assessment for absenteeism district-wide. This is what our expectation is for absenteeism. This is, you know, you're either, I get evaluated every year. And so my absence is a part of that. Whether I'm able to perform my job because I was at work the days that I'm paid to be at work, regardless of, you know, my personal necessity hours. But overall, I'm expected to perform specifically certain tasks throughout the year. And if I'm absent, that's going to be affected. So I think it's looking at, when we evaluate our teachers, looking at that tool and how we can create something more uniform so that we're giving the same message to every single teacher in this district about absenteeism. But that would be the only way that we can do that, is through that tool. The expectation that we have when it comes to absenteeism.
Which means we have to be very honest, right? We have to be willing to say this is, we're balancing the checkbook, or this is what it's showing.
Yep.
Lots of discussion we can have around the whole thing.
Right, right. All right, the last piece of data in the culture and climate section is the student survey data.
So this was, Positive Climate Committee meets every 2 weeks, have representatives from every school site. Be meeting on Monday, by the way, so those of you don't remember. And what it tasked was beginning way back at the beginning of last school year, so it's been going for a year and a half now. We're to look at ways to improve the climate and the culture of the school in ways that would move our district from lower the hammer on students who are making bad choices to trying to counsel them and to work with them and teach them what choices they should be making and how to avoid doing them in the future. One of the things that committee did last year, so so we're getting ready to do it again this year, but it hasn't happened yet, was we gave a climate survey to, we offered it to all the students in the district, and in the end, 32 plus 40, almost 4,500 students took the survey. And we asked them these questions. These questions are from the California Healthy Kids Survey, and we modified, we didn't use the entire California Healthy Kids Survey. The committee went through, pulled out 11 different questions. They were given to the students. Side of the page are the TK through second grade responses, and the way that those were done was by using a smiley face and a sad face and a middle face, right? So they only had 3 responses. They were asked these questions, and if you look at the wording, because they were read out loud by the teacher, and the kids used a computer to plug in their answer. And so the wording was geared toward the littler guys. The same exact questions, we paired them up right and left here, so you can see question 1, question 2, question. As of the older kids, they had a different scale from no, never to yes all the time, which again, we applied the colors that you used to here to the positives and the negatives and so on. But since the older kids had more choices than the younger kid, couldn't just lump them together. So you got 2 different graphs together, and basically you're looking for lots of blue and green. And for whatever reasons in the Google form, the littler one started at 12 o'clock noon and went clockwise, and the other ones went counterclockwise, but in terms of the positive colors. So looking at this, you can see that most of the time, at least on the first page, you've got pretty positive overall sentiments in the sense of the blue and green for those 4 questions. What the committee realized, though, is when you get down to it, we started to hit a major problem in question 8 and question 9. And even the littlest kids went from, if you look at 5, 6, and 7 on the second page, where those numbers are up in the, well over 3/4, 80%, blue, 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 boom. Even the littlest kids, even the transitional kindergarten kids, felt that students, fewer of them felt that students were treated fairly when they broke school rules. That was a major shift, and that same shift happened all the way up to 8th grade. So the committee felt that there was a pervasive sentiment starting right away. I mean, it's not just that little kids feel this way, it starts when they're little kids, that students are not treated fairly. That can mean a lot of things, it's just that one sentence. But nevertheless, the whole capturing kids' hearts and going that direction, as opposed to restorative justice or positive behavior intervention strategies or any of the other types of things that came from that. And then number 9 is a similar.
What does this color mean?
That color is the smiley face.
Okay, so question 4, do grown-ups treat you fairly at school? 45% of kids feel that they do.
That's what that, question number 4, yes.
Okay.
And then, but number 8 is, do they treat you fairly when you break school rules? And that's the difference there. So they feel like I'm treated fairly, but when I break the rules, maybe I'm not treated the same way everyone else is, or maybe they're not treated the same way, or whatever. In any case, when these
Tom gives me a ticket, I believe it's fair.
So I think that the overall with this, because I want to march us through, this is the kind of data we're getting from kids to make decisions about school climate. The next one, we're going to move to the California Healthy Kids Survey. We're going to be collecting data from staff. So I gave you an example of what that looks like. And then the next stable packet is the kind of data we're going to collect from parents. And when we go to the California Healthy Kids system, we're going to give students, parents, staff, and then it can be triangulated as well as, it can be aggregated as well as disaggregated. And because there's similar types of questions, similar types of threads that we can look at to make our culture and climate assumptions or not analyzing what's currently going on. Right now, we don't have a parent survey and we don't have a staff survey. So we need to put those into place. Although the state indicator
is only asking for parent. And parent and student. These are two that they're asking for, and that's under the local indicator. That's why we need to pick which one we want to do. California Healthy Kids Survey is highly regarded. It's been around for a while. It's research validated. And when we go to write grants, it's one of the indicators that is widely accepted for state and federal grants. So it's going to be able to feed a lot of birds with the same crumb by getting that information. And we can look at it longitudinally. They've done a really good job of, if you use this 5 years ago, and even though we've changed it, your data can be tracked and followed, unlike the state assessment. So putting all of those pieces together is then how we looked at, and then you have your last organizer, which is on culture and climate. And so what are the current strategies that we're using? And there you see that we have an attendance coordinator already in place. There's no research from Hattie that I can find about the effectiveness of that. But we know how we're driving it. And so we know how effective that is being, because our kids, we have, but when I go and I sit with the judge and the whole SARB committee, and I think I see principals nodding their heads, we are doing very, very, very well in this area, comparatively to other districts, and even not comparatively, we're just doing well. We have that same attendance coordinator is also the parent outreach coordinator. And you see there what I was saying, Pat, is that ranks number 45. And so if the parent outreach needs to come from the site. The bottom line is everyone at the site needs to be focusing on their parent community. And here's the things that Hattie says should be happening. The best bang for your buck is kindergarten through 3. Most successful involvement is related to doing tutoring and home visits and interactions by teachers. The lowest was parent training program. Okay? And doing parent training, reading training led to the highest gains. So that's where we need to focus our efforts. And then we have the Positive Climate Committee, which ranks very high because it works on those teacher-student relationships. But we think it's about positive discipline, and positive discipline actually is aided. Because the premise is if you've got a rigorous, engaging academic program, your behaviors are going to be minimized. So if you look on page 4, you see what our plan is. And again, looking at bringing on capturing kids' hearts, our anti-bullying, character education, making sure that those programs are systemic. There is a system for constantly having those at the forefront with staff and students. But it's those daily teacher relationships that must be in place so that kids feel connected, parents feel connected. And then those high leverage strategies of providing feedback about behavior, helping kids learn how to problem solve. Consultation is only aided, meaning let's go out and talk to the kid about it. Because again, you've got to have a rigorous, high-level academic program, and they're getting feedback constantly. So sending the kid to the principal's office is not going to get that change in culture and in behavior. It's got to be the teacher-student relationship, teacher-parent relationship. There's some different things in the reallocation of resources here than in the other 3. Because this is really about providing that system of support around mental health, around behavior, what kind of development we need to make sure that we provide for teachers, doing the survey so we get that feedback, so we have data, as we've alluded to here, to react to, as well as be proactive from. And then teaching the administrators, this whole team, how you are the conduit to your community.
not a coordinator from the district office, but how you are the conduit with your community for creating the positive climate and the positive culture. So that's what the plan is.
I have a question.
Yes.
As far as the surveys go, is there any way, these surveys are already established?
Yeah.
So when it's asking about, are you treated fairly? You couldn't change that?
What we need to do is educate the kids on what fairly means.
Yeah. Well, ultimately, to me, it's subjective statement, right? So
It's perception data. Just know that it's perception data. That's what surveys are.
and I get that, but my only point is if you're getting that sentiment from someone, you can't just leave it there. You gotta go a lot deeper. Otherwise, the kid's just disagreeing with the rules, really, and that's why he thinks it's unfair or whatever.
Yeah.
So,
That's why it's about the conversation. It's actually a teachable moment. What does fairly mean? It's like Rob said, when he gets a ticket, even though he was driving 95, on his way to Ridgemark, he thinks it's unfair.
It was 98.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, but that's the conversation. That's the beauty of it, is being able then to do the teaching and the conversation. Yeah, you can't just be left there. I think everyone here would totally agree that it's about that conversation and the living about it.
that's my only concern.
Yeah.
If you're just trying to see without a flashlight in the dark.
Yes, very much.
In response to that data, we made a number of decisions. We went to training last summer, we're rolling out those things this year, we're going to do the capturing kids art. So that's the sort of high level look at it. So when we saw this, what did the district do? And then we went ahead and did those, setting those things up.
So that is the data that we are using as the tactical team to develop our systems and to examine the current, to develop the systems for the future, and making sure that we have ongoing information coming into the system so that we're making the best possible decision in the moment. We have to mimic what we're expecting teachers to do. Teachers get that data daily, and they're adjusting and adding it to their repertoire. As a district, we've got to get that information daily, weekly, monthly, and examine it and see, is our system functioning? Is it well oiled? Are all the cogs working with each other? And so that we have that systemic approach instead of just, this is what's happening over here for this English learner at Mays. I should be able to say that English learner at Mays and the English learner at Calaveras and the English learner at HDLA, if we push forward things that are in a systemic way, we should be able to look at it that way. So that's what we have. At the end of the agenda, we're going to just go a few more minutes here. Just if there's any additional information or actions you need from us moving forward. This is about that conversation of how do you want to proceed with getting data. Do we want to do an annual data study session? Do we want to do a data study session twice a year? Put all those kinds of things out there. I think in short term, I just want to know, do you want the sites to continue giving you their individual presentations? And then we want to know what support we can expect from you as board members in regard to what's been shared here. We'll start with the first one. It's at the 11:45 block on your agenda. What additional information, or how do you want us to continue to give you the data?
First of all, can I ask just one quick question? How often does this committee meet?
Every other week.
Every other week. How many people are on that committee?
There'll be a representative from each site, so it's based upon the sites, and then I'm there.
Okay.
All people.
Okay, so how often does a similar committee meet about things like the students hitting the benchmarks? The academic part of what we're doing.
Would you say that's leadership?
Every other week. Yes.
And how many people are in there?
45?
Awesome. But I think we know from the data that we got on the individual schools, it's not working. So is it that school districts looking at that data, but they're not reacting to it? So I think the answer is yes, but I just wanted to throw that, throw that out there because that's very telling to me. But getting to Dr. Andrews' question, this information is absolutely awesome. I think it would take me going through this and saying, here's what was really valuable to me, but the benchmark data and someday correlating that to the grades that are getting in the classroom would be awesome. But I think that for each school, we could take what you gave us, the principals gave us on each school, and came up with a dashboard that was presented to us each school board meeting that just said, here's where attendance is, the benchmark data, if we could do it, you know, that's the holy grail. The teacher attendance thing, so that we can see, uh-oh, there's a problem. Not that we're expected to solve the problem, just that we know that you, the educators, are aware of it. But this has been awesome from my point of view. I mean, if we did this, just think about that, we met every Saturday to review this. Do you think the school district would improve or not? I think it absolutely, it would. I think every Saturday probably would not go well. And I'm going to end anything I can say here. I cannot tell you how much I appreciate all of you who gave up half of your Saturday to be here. It's absolutely awesome. And thank you those that have a sick child at home and things like that. I mean, it doesn't get any better than this for this group to come together and actually discuss this stuff. So,
as far as our board meetings, I definitely appreciate the reporting. If anything, I personally, especially like with some of the stuff Ross mentioned, when you're delving into acronyms, it gets kind of confusing. But you know, I'm in sales myself, so I'm going to get someone to understand what the value of what I'm offering, or at least the reality of it. I'm going to try to simplify it and just hit very important points on all these things and how they relate to our decision making. Then I think once you use that as a measure, then we can filter that into better decision making. So you guys are really smart people, so when you guys get into a whole lot of nuances, it kind of complicates, at least for me personally, it makes it a little bit hard for me to piece it together. Unless I live in your world, I can't really understand it, but if you simplify it for me and just hit those points, I think you guys, it'll help me a lot to help you.
I'm looking at what you presented, and that one phrase, reallocation of resources, is like almost a new baseline. Because we have been contributing to those processes and those drivers a little bit. But now the focus is definitely going to be different, and it's going to be coordinated, and it's going to be systemic. So I think looking at data too fast is not probably the best idea, because there's going to be a culture shock here. There's going to be a change, and people are going to be upset, and you have to allow them time to process. So I think I would like to see another look at our data in 6 months, or maybe at the beginning of the school year, things that will contribute to our data as we go forward into the next school year, because we're halfway through this one. The other thing is, I like hearing from each one of the schools. But I know you have glory days, and I'm thinking about myself. I always learn from case studies. When you have something that works and something that's successful, not with names or anything like that, because Johnny one was doing this and that and the other, then this is how we handled it. And we really had a conversation. And that conversation, just a one-on-one continued conversation, made a change in the outcome. So I just, as a suggestion, maybe that might be a topic where you could change every 6 months, you could change the topic that the principals report on and see how each one of them handled something different. And if it could have been done better. You know, you can always do things better. You know, take your foot out of it now and proceed. But that's just things that I think would be interesting to get a snapshot of something that happened on each campus.
I think for me, the changes to the structure of our district, and looking at what is truly effective and are these positions really going to make the impact that we need them to make. I think that's where I've been struggling because, and I'm being completely open and honest with all of you. I really am struggling with creating top level positions that are very, very far away from the classroom. And so is that the truest impact that we're going to make on a daily basis in the classroom? I don't know. I think this today helped me personally, helped to give me a breakdown of what we need and where our focus should be. And so it's just for me, because I know that is the challenge historically, culturally in this district is saying, because you're looking at this picture of, well, why are we needing positions up here if we need it down here? And that's that perception of, I want our teachers to know that the way that we're going is truly the structure that will provide them with the greatest support possible. And that is, I think, the buy-in that we all need to have in this concept, including myself. Because if we truly don't believe that this is going to work, and the structure in which we are moving into, but it's educating ourselves in how this will truly, truly make the impact that it needs to make. And so that's where, how do we, as a group, work on that? How are we going to move forward to get the buy-in from our teachers and from our classified? Because we are going to be making some cuts. That's the reality of it. And so cuts are always the hardest thing. I think because of where we came from years back and cutting things down to the bone, still kind of leaves that bad taste in your mouth in trust. And thinking, okay, we're cutting here, but we're adding here, and why? And so I think it's that conversation that we really need to be open and honest and transparent about to make sure that this is successful. And so how do we do that? How do we start those conversations? How do we start building that that ability to trust each other and be honest about certain things that we're struggling with as people? And I think it's that honesty of, like Lisa says, how did I do today? And there may be times that I don't always agree, or there may be some negative stuff that we have to discuss. But it's always about getting better, and it's changing that mindset of get better at what I do. So how do I do that? Help me do that. And I think it's, if we can instill in our teachers and in ourselves that capacity to want to improve and feel like we need to improve. First of all, I got to know that I got a problem to know that I need to improve. How do we do that in a constructive manner? And so it's
it's gonna take us some time, and I know this is gonna be difficult. This isn't, I mean, I'm really preparing for, you know, the onset of, you know, what we saw, you know, negotiations a few years back, because it is gonna be that type of an impact again. Because structurally, it's like the foundation being, you know, the rug being pulled out from under you, thinking, okay, now what am I doing? And it's them trusting that we're doing it for the betterment of our kids. Not necessarily through, you know, their eyes, but in a way that through research and through evidence and everything that was presented today, it reinforces why we need to do what we need to do, but how do you communicate that to them?
Right off your shoulder, it says why, right? And why is this? And to answer your other question in the most constructive way possible, I don't know any more way than this meeting here today, and this binder, and most of the information in there that I understand is a constructive way of doing it. So communicating it to the teachers, I mean, that's closed session stuff, I think, but.
I think the ambiguity in all this is we basically, and I've been here only 2 years, right? So I'm still one of the rookies in the group, but all I know is the things that I've really learned is there's different measurements of truth, right? But results prove themselves. So results is something that you really couldn't argue with. And that's it's really, I mean, having that honest conversation with, I agree, it's got to be honest, but we got to make sure that we have equal measurements of what that truth means. We can't have a subjective perspective. We can't be the third grader that says, I don't know if I'm being treated fairly because I don't like rules. We got to know what the relative outcome is of what the goals are. So,
We also have to say who we're working for. We're working for the kids.
Exactly.
So not to be the biggest employer in the county. We're working with the kids.
Well, and that's why my point was, as a comparative measure, there is a perspective that says more money means more results, but that's not true. That's just not true. And we're literally dealing with the repercussions of that false truth. So how do you deal with that? We're trying to basically allocate and focus on what is good and what does prove results, and try to really establish a healthy foundation. So you're right, this means taking the wool out. Or to me, better yet, you're tearing down the old foundation, and you're rebuilding on one that's really supposed to be a lot more solid than the original.
Great. Elton, do you want to add?
I would like to, I really enjoyed this meeting today, to get the notes. I would like to see if maybe we could get reports from principals and teachers from schools on a quarterly basis, maybe, not every school board, with the pluses or the pluses that they see in their staff and their school, as well as maybe something to grow on. So like that, we know, and then we can catch up on what they're growing on, and once they reach a certain level, then they can have something else to grow on.
Doing this twice a year is good. I think the measurement of kind of what we started at the beginning, once we have data to go off of and do that be our initial, and then assess how we did in June. I think would really be beneficial. Because I think I know with the high school they do, you have even your division chairs, your current leaders within the structure of math, English. I don't know if we could do that or if that would make sense from a site, not just the principal, but also selecting the principal, selecting other co-leaders with them to help kind of introduce this is what we're doing this year, and this is how we're going to improve. And then at the end of the year, come back and report, this is what happened. Giving me some great
I'd also like one more thing. I don't know if anybody has ever seen the movie Cypher in the Snow. Has anybody heard about that movie?
What movie?
Cypher in the Snow. It's a short, it's an educational movie. You see it? And I would like for us to see if we can find a copy and have the teachers at all sides see it. It's a very good movie. That's probably pretty old.
Can I get clarification from Liz and who else? Are you saying that we should only look at this data like this twice a year? Is that what you're suggesting, or we have this meeting twice a year?
I think we have a meeting like this twice a year.
Okay, but what do you feel about seeing the data from here?
I think the data is important as they're collecting it to kind of gauge where we are. And we don't necessarily have to have a specific report on it because we'll know from the initial report what we're tracking. And we can see how we're progressing throughout the year, but an official presentation, public presentation with board meetings at the beginning and then at the end.
Okay, good. No, good. What I'm worried about is that early warning thing, like where we see drop off in assessments or attendance would be, well, that's a budgetary item mostly, but.
I've got some ideas. I think that listening to all of you, I've got a couple of ideas for some structures that, I mean, I'll put you on in a little bit. I think you learned a major processor, as you can see. So that's some good ideas, good feedback that I can bring home.
And I'd like for us as a board and as a unit to keep the child in focus. It's not just the academics, it's the children that come to us without eating or being abused or the whole treatment of the child, not just, I'm here to learn, but what if I didn't have any breakfast? What if my dad beat up my mom? All that stuff matters on how they're growing and how they're developing. And I think that it's very important to nip it when they're young so that they can feel wanted and accepted at school.
Also, one last thing, hopefully we could get some feedback from the principals on meetings like this as well for us as a board. The advantages of doing this with you, because I think that's important for us, the engagement, the ability to have this casual conversation, and we get to know each other, and it just breaks down some, because we can't do this in board meetings, the setting is just too structured, but I think being able to meet like this with you all helps just build that culture that we will try to build moving forward. I think it's just very powerful that we can do this, we can break bread together and just throw some ideas out there. And you know that, we're here, we care about you. And that at the end of the day, just like the board meetings, you are the ones that are, in the line of fire every day, dealing with, our teachers, our staff, our parents, and our students. And so we just want to make sure that you feel that we are listening and we can care.
On that note, because it's what we can count on you to do. Thank you, Liz. I think you started that. So to know that this was a huge, I don't want to call it risk, but this is a big deal to have the principals here today with their data in front of you. And we had a lot of discussions about what they could expect, how it would be structured, and they trusted me. They trusted to show up today that's like, okay, it's going to be a group effort, it's going to be a systems focus, and that it would be worth their while to come and to be part of this. So it shows you their want and desire to solve this collectively in a systematic way. So some things that they can count on you for in regards to the strategies shared today. If Liz is what you just shared, they can count on you with supporting, and they're on the front line. Any other final thoughts about what we can expect and the ways of your support about the strategies shared today?
Board members or principals?
Board members, to the rest of us.
Support.
Okay.
I mean, what it comes down to, right, you guys are the facilitators of this process. Our goal is to make sure that we're dealing with good information that helps us to help you. So I would say, when you consider accountability in many terms, it becomes a negative to people. All I know is, back in the day when I used to do a lot more working out, I used to measure how many push-ups I could do so I could figure out what it would take to get stronger, right? So I'm trying to say is accountability is actually a good thing. It just means that we're trying to find out where we're at so we know where we need to be. And it's not a negative, it shouldn't take a negative connotation. So when we're saying support, if we get results that are not positive, as long as we're on the same page and we're seeing the effort, then it's a lot easier to support, knowing that the results aren't there, but they're gonna be there because the effort's there. So really, our greatest measure is the effort, rather than, because we're starting from ground zero, right? Where do you go besides up?
I understand there's a tremendous amount of pressure on your shoulders. And so I want to make sure that the structure that we want to create is going to help positions that we currently don't have are actually going to help relieve some of that pressure. You just have to trust and be honest and communicate with Lisa what structures are truly helping move towards harmony. Because if this is going to be successful, you guys have to be honest with the support that you're getting or the lack thereof. Okay, because there's an immense amount of pressure being put on principals that you probably didn't feel before. And so we don't, want to make sure that we're not doing it with negative, it's all on you, okay? And you gotta meet all these expectations and our eyes are focused on you and, it's just, okay, but how do I stay above water? How do I make this work? And so when you can't feel like you have the skill set to figure it out, there should be somebody here that can help you. And that's what I want to make sure that what we are bringing in is going to meet your needs. Yes?
I think we have a big ship that we're trying to turn. And nobody can do it alone. It takes many, many people to make a difference. And you don't see the difference right away. You see the sun coming up on the right-hand side of the ship, and suddenly it's on the left-hand side of the ship. So it takes a while. And there's a number of aspects of the changes that Andrews has proposed that I think are very impressive. I like the idea of the shared leadership because, if she is out for a period of time, you should not miss a beat because somebody else that she has taught this aspect to or that aspect to will just assume that role. And the same thing with you as a principal. If you're going to be out for 10 days because that cruise was just too wonderful to not take part of, then there will be someone else who can step right in and continues the process. So, and I'm fully convinced it is a systemic issue. Our teachers are not lousy teachers. They're good people. I haven't been able to find one that I haven't been impressed by. The principals, I know them all. I think their schools are special. But even though we're going to have a standardized, systemic way of dealing with things, each school will still have their own little personality. Because that's the way the kids are. They each have their own little personality. But we have to know whether we need to steer the ship another degree to the right or another degree to the left. And hopefully we'll find that key because it's been elusive until this time.
Well, Lisa, Scott, Pam,
Diana?
Christy, Joe, and Bill. Sorry.
Elena?
No.
And Elena.
No, and Elena, I'm sorry.
And Monique.
Sorry about that. I'll tell you the same thing that I tell Lisa every time I talk to her, and I'll tell Gabe, and I'll tell Des, is, you know, I view my role as supporting you. That support doesn't come directly, it comes, you know, mainly through Lisa, but in all seriousness, seriously, I am here to support you. My only desire for this meeting here is I don't want you to be intimidated by your boss's presence, meaning Lisa or the school board, and I wish we heard more from you on what your opinions were on things like that, because this is definitely not a one-way conversation. It seemed like today, it was 75%, one way, because we're all looking for what's out best. I'm going to differ with Pat on one thing is the kids are not our customers. It's the kids and the parents are our customers. And it's very, very important that the parents feel good about where their children are, just as much as the children are growing and feeling that they're safe in schools. And also, just a minor disagreement is there are bad teachers, there are bad administrators, and we have to face that. I live and breathe this stuff just because of my history and who I'm married to, but it doesn't mean they can't be improved. In fact, I've seen it over and over again where we focused on a teacher and made that teacher better, or made an administrator better. And of course, I live in the corporate world, and it's the same thing. So, but whatever you guys need to succeed, we need you to be asking the administration for that, Lisa for that, and it will get to us. So, and again, I just want to say thank you to across the board for being here.
Yeah.
Okay, do I have a motion to adjourn this meeting? All those in favor?
Aye.
Those are your opposed?
All right, so I've invited the principals to my place for a debrief, lunch debrief. So I'll see you there. Are you going to come to this birthday? Because I have a birthday cake on you. I got a birthday cake. Right. If you're in the lab, and then text me and I'll put you in.